The town council, or the Town of Los Gatos Planning Commission meeting of February 12th, or March 12th, I'm so sorry, 2025 is now called to order. I will now call the roll. Commissioners, please state here when your name is called. Commissioner Burnett.
Here.
Commissioner Raspy. Here. Commissioner Barnett.
Here.
Commissioner Stump.
Here.
And please note that Vice Chair Birch is absent. But I am here as well. If you are able, please stand as Commissioner Raspy leads us in the pledge.
Thank you. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As the Planning Commission conducts the meeting this evening, we encourage active participation by the public, which is essential to democracy and to the work of the Planning Commission. Public input is very much welcome and is always considered. The public can participate in several ways. Prior to a meeting, written comments about agenda items may be submitted to staff. During the meeting, there are two opportunities for members of the public to participate. First, during the verbal communications period, an individual may speak on any topic that is not on the agenda. Second, during the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting, any member of the public may speak about an agenda item. You will be advised of the times when you speak on each of these items. If you wish to address the commission tonight during the verbal communications portion or public hearings agenda item, please raise your hand on Zoom, or for those here in person, complete a speaker card and give it to a staff member. Please print your name with phonetic spelling, or if you are speaking anonymously, just write down your initials. When you are called to speak, please come up to the podium and speak directly into the microphone as the meeting is being recorded. State your name and address for the record or indicate you are speaking anonymously. You will have 3 minutes to speak. We will now begin with the verbal communications portion of the meeting, during which members of the public are invited to address the commission on any issue that is not on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Staff will announce when your 3-minute time is up. I do not have any speaker cards. Is there anyone on Zoom?
There's no one with their hands raised, okay. Chair.
Thank you. Tonight we will have one item on the consent calendar, being the approval of the draft minutes of our last Planning Commission meeting. Before the Planning Commission acts on the consent calendar, any member of the commission or the public may request that this item be removed. Are there any such requests? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Oh. Commissioner Barnett.
Emily,
yes.
One thing I was going to say, I did watch the meeting, even though I was not here, so I do feel prepared to vote on the meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you. I do not think, Ms. Whalen, can you clarify if we...
Yes, watching the minutes suffices to be able to, watching the meeting online suffices to vote on the minutes.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? So I now call the question and ask for a show of hands in favor of the motion. The motion passes unanimously. We will now move on to public hearings, starting with item number 2. Item number 2 is to consider a request for approval to demolish an existing single-family residence, construct a new single-family residence to exceed floor area ratio standards with reduced side yard setbacks, construct an accessory structure with reduced side yard setbacks, and site improvements, requiring a grading permit on a non-conforming property zoned R18, located at 176 Loma Alta Avenue, APN 532-28031. Architecture and Site Application S-24-042, categorically exempt pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. Section 15303A, new construction or conversion of a small structures. Property owner, the Thornberry 2021 Revocable Trust dated November 4th, 2021, and the Donald S. Thornberry and Barbara J. Gardner Revocable Living Trust dated December 21st, 2010. The applicant is Jay Plett, and project planner is Maria Chavarine. And Ms. Chavarine, I believe you will be giving the staff report, but before that, I just want to ask with a show of hands of commissioners that have visited the site. And do we have any disclosures? Great, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Maria Chavarin, Project Planner for the property at 176 Loma Alta Avenue. The item before you today was continued from the Planning Commission hearing of January 22nd, 2025, with the following direction to the applicant: to reduce the floor area ratio, increase the side yard setbacks at the nook area, increase the side yard setbacks at the dining area, increase the side yard setbacks at the fireplace area, use frosted windows or change the clear story windows at the restroom and children's room on the second floor, work with the neighbor on placement of the windows at the stairs, address privacy, and reduce the height of the residence. The applicant provided a revised letter of justification found in Exhibit 21 of the staff report, responding to the direction of the Planning Commission. The applicant proposes a 2,874 square foot, two-story single-family residence with 800 square feet below grade floor area, a 777 square foot attached accessory dwelling unit, and a 529 square foot one-car garage on a non-conforming lot. The ADU is not the subject of this application and will be reviewed ministerially through a building permit application. The proposed residence exceeds the allowable floor area ratio by 420 square feet. The entire below-grade area of 1,581 square feet is exempt from countable floor area ratio. The proposed residence will result in the second largest by square footage and tied with two other parcels in terms of floor area ratio in the immediate neighborhood. The project complies with the zoning regulations for parking height and lot coverage. The applicant is requesting reduced side yard setbacks for the main residence, resulting in 3 feet 6 inches on the right side and 5 feet on the left side yard, as well as reduced side yard setbacks for the detached one-car garage, resulting in 4 feet on the right side. After publication of the staff report, an addendum and desk item has been provided to the commission. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Yes, Commissioner Barnett.
When discussing the exception requests, you mentioned 2 homes, and was that in relation to the FAR or other aspects? So I thought there were 6 that were equal to or greater on the FAR issue.
Thank you for the question. Just to clarify, are you referring to the neighborhood compatibility comparing this residence to another single-family residence?
Well, in your presentation just now, you mentioned 2 homes in relationship to exceptions. And I was trying to understand if that would be related to the FAR or to setbacks or to height.
Thank you. It's related to the floor area ratio.
Okay, I thought there were no more, but I'll double check my records. Thank you.
Any other questions? We will now open the public portion of the public hearing on item number 2 and give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes. And I believe Jessica Thornberry will be speaking first. Thank you.
Can we have the slides?
Yes, you can wait until the slides are up, and then your 5 minutes will start.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for me to speak with you today. My name is Jessica Thornberry. Myself, with my spouse, Blake Thornberry, we're the owner of the property. We understand that there is some misunderstanding of the data we have in the public comments regarding our proposal. We're engineers, so we wanted to use the data to speak for themselves. So today I want to walk you through the design compatibility study and let the data speak for themselves. So next page. This is an aerial view of our neighborhood where we base our study on 16 homes in the immediate neighborhoods. As you can see, the lot here in this neighborhood are all long and narrow, and they are located in very close proximity to each other. Next one. One of the primary concerns we have heard is regarding to FAR. The chart compares our current FAR, our proposed FAR, and the FAR of the surrounding home. As you can see, the blue dots represent our current FAR, which is significantly smaller than the house around us. The green dots represent our proposed FAR, which has been reduced to 0.386. After this adjustment, our house falls in line with the neighborhood average in key metrics such as the residential square footage, FAR, delta to guidance. In fact, our proposed FAR ranks the 7th of the 16 homes that we listed here, placing us almost the exact median of the matrix. This addressed the concern that our house is too large for the lot size. And then if you see on the second chart, that's the lot size. In reality, our lot size and the house size are both quite average when you compare it to the neighborhood. The key takeaway on this page is that we're moving the smallest house on this neighborhood to a more in line with the neighborhood average. Next, please. Next, we discuss, this is something we come up with a rear projection of the house in comparison to the neighborhood. This image highlights that despite the narrow lot, the rear projection of our home is consistent with what is found in the surrounding properties. This is because we have chosen a space-efficient Italianate Victorian design to ensure that we can stay within the bounds with everybody else. Next one, regarding to setback. As you can see on this chart, the red are the ones that with non-conforming lot and non-conforming setbacks. The staff report originally found our setback to be compatible with the neighborhood already with the original design. But we have gone further by increasing the setback on both sides of the property. As you've seen here, many of the homes have non-conforming setback, and we're simply requesting to align with the typical setback pattern despite having the nearest front lot. And we believe that the setback on the chimney is an architectural feature, but if we need to remove it, we can discuss that. Next one, in terms of height, our home is the shortest one in the neighborhood, and we're not asking for any exemptions here. In fact, we're reducing the height by 6 inches based on the feedback from the neighbors, and then after this adjustment, 9 homes on the block will be equal or taller than our proposed home. On the issue of privacy, next page, we commit to address the privacy concern through fencing and landscaping, which we will be implementing at our own cost. If our neighbor have additional concern, they are more than welcome to take preventative measures as well. We feel like we made proactive efforts, but unfortunately we haven't seen the same level of collaboration in return. So at the last meeting, one of the commissioners asked, like, why are we even talking about this project here? The response from the planning was that it was due to original FAR concern of 0.46, which was highest on the block. Since then, we have worked diligently to address the FAR and have thoughtful compromises on every aspect discussed in the last meeting. Our goal has always been enhancing the character of the neighborhood and the beauty of it while respecting the established framework. We have received numerous letters of endorsement in supporting of this effort, and reflects the positive impact that we're aiming to have on the community. We respectfully ask for fairness and objectivity in evaluating this project. We understand that change can be difficult, and it is natural for some concerns to arise, but it is important for us to base our decision on facts and objective evidence rather than subjective opinions or emotions. When decisions are influenced by personal bias rather than variable fact, we risk letting those biases shape our outcome, and this is something none of us want. Our intention is to enhance this community, and we trust that the committee will give us fair and thoughtful consideration of our effort, and thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have Questions at this time for the applicant team? Commissioner Stump.
How has the mass and scale of your home changed? What has specifically changed? I know you're talking about the FAR, but I'm talking about the mass and the scale of the home itself. How much has it changed?
I think if we can go back to the rear projection slides. Yes, this page. So first of all, we reduced the setback on both sides, and we reduced the height as well. So we changed the mass quite drastically. And then on the second point is like, even though the mass is what it is, it's in line with everybody else. Like, we're not projecting any further than anybody else on the block. In fact, we are like shorter than a lot of people on this neighborhood.
Any other questions? Commissioner Raspy?
Thank you, Chair. This may be, I think maybe a technical question, so maybe better for your architect, but I understand that you've reduced some of your square footage by converting 777 square feet from the lower floor into an attached ADU. Can you explain how that worked? Is that simply a math recalculation, or did anything actually change in the design? I'm just curious. I couldn't tell from the description.
Do you want my architect?
Below grade area, so it did not affect the mass, but it is, you don't see it. It's just underneath the rear veranda. So, but it does not count as floor area.
Okay, so by recategorizing it as ADU space as opposed to primary residence space, that square footage shifted over to the ADU. Is that essentially right?
Yes, and it's also separated and has a separate entrance from the main house.
Okay. Did you make any redesign since our last meeting to that effect, or
I'm sorry, say it again?
Was there any physical redesign that allowed you to make that change since our last meeting?
Not for that. We increased the nook setback to 178 by a foot. So and we've also moved it in from increased the rear setback, which saved us 23 square feet on the main level. So we do have a 5-foot setback, which matches the neighbor at 178. And then the setback on the other side, we moved the chimney in another 6 inches, but we see that as an architectural feature. It's only a small portion of the wall. Our setback is greater than the neighbor at 172, and if you deem that we should eliminate the chimney, we can do that. But we'd like to keep it, but we're willing to let it go.
And Mr. Plett, I'm sorry, while you're here, we note that you've reduced the overall height by 6 inches. Can you tell me where that 6 inches came from? And related question, what are your current floor plates for first and second floor?
What was the second part?
Your current floor plate heights, your floor heights for first and second floor?
The floor height is, the ceiling height is about 10'6" at the first level, and 8'6", I believe. It's on the building section at the upper level. And we took the 6 inches off the height of the roof. We just dropped the roof down. But one thing that's very critical here is that you look at sheet A 1.1, if you have that in front of you, and you can see that Blake is a very competent engineer, and he surveyed the houses, and it turns out that 162 is actually 30 feet from the street. And we're only 26, we were actually 26.6, and we lowered it another 6 inches. And if you look at sheet A 1.1, you can see the benchmark that 162 creates. And it's outlined in red, and we're well below, it's 30 feet, and we're well below. We're 4 feet below 162, which is in the immediate neighborhood, which is a house on a conforming lot.
Thank you for the response.
Okay.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant team? Oh, yes, Commissioner Barnett.
It's a question from Ms. Thornberry. In the desk item or one of them that we received today, the owners made reference to your meeting of March 2nd, and can you tell me the substance of that from your perspective? And then they go on to say that the plans were changed after that. and that they were submitted to the town without notice.
I believe the March 2nd meeting, we asked, had they seen, we had the new drawings had been submitted, the meeting had been pushed out. We asked if they had seen the new drawings that had been submitted online. Before the meeting, they had asked, what is the point of the meeting? Doesn't look like anything has changed. We still met them out front. They said, we asked them if they had any questions. They said they didn't have any questions. So the meeting was adjourned.
Yeah, I think the first time that we reached out was like March 24th, that we were requesting to meet. But it was because we were waiting for one side of the neighbors to come back from vacation. Unfortunately, the other side was going on vacation the same day, so we were like, okay, can we just meet now? And unfortunately, it didn't happen, so we had to push it to March 2nd, which is when everybody was available.
Okay, then the second, if I may, through the chair, the second part of the question is it correct that new plans were submitted to the town by yourselves after that meeting without notice to the neighbors?
The plan was submitted in February, not March. It's not after the March 3rd meeting.
Okay.
It's before that meeting.
The plans were not changed after the meeting?
We were, I think we asked them what do they want to, like, do they have any questions on the plan, and they said no questions. So there was no feedback on it.
We had offered to meet, but they were on vacation, so the meeting was pushed out until they were available.
Now, I understand, but what I'm trying to get at is, in the desk item, if I read it correctly, there was a concern that the plans changed after the meeting of March 2nd, and they were submitted to the town without notice to the neighbors.
We did not change the plans after March 2nd.
Okay, thanks very much.
Any other questions at this time? Okay, thank you. So we will now, I have a lot of cards here, so we will get through all of these. I just want to remind everyone before I do this that you're here to address the commission, so please come forward, speak into the microphone, and it is important that we remain respectful while we are here in this public space, okay? And you're talking to us and not each other. We understand? Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a number of cards, so it also is important that we do have 3 minutes. The timer is up in front of you, but we will be able to ask you questions after your 3-minute time is up. So just please come up when you are called to speak and state your name and address, or speak anonymously, but please speak into the microphone. First, I have Gina Tuckfield.
Hi. Okay, I take issue with the accusation by 176 that your neighbors built a house with disregard to privacy. If you look at the pictures presented by 176 on page 101 of the agenda packet, you'll notice that picture was taken from the place where the new garage will be, not where the new house will be. Had they not already cut down several trees, maybe even the garage would still have privacy. It's misleading that they didn't even take the picture from where their new house will be. They cut down at least 8 trees in November 2023 and June 2024. It is illegal to cut down trees without first getting a permit from the town arborist. No permits were pulled. It is also illegal without an arborist assessment to cut down trees during bird nesting season, February 1st to August 31st, due to California Fish and Game and Migratory Bird Treaty Act. It appears the proposed project includes windows that provide a view of their neighbor's master bedroom and bathroom. The town recommended that they work with those neighbors to address window placement, but they refused. They knew the size of this non-conforming lot and allowable square footage of a new home when purchased. I live at 162, which he just said compared the 30-foot height limit. Our roof height is at 30-foot height, but our home is on a downward slope from front to back. So the 30-foot height is in the back of the house, not the front of the house. Just need to address that. So they knew the size of this lot and the allowable square footage of a new home when purchased. I live 2 doors down and built following all the rules. For comparison, my lot is 8,680 square feet, house 2,600 square feet. Their lot is 7,345 square feet, and a proposed house plans that are 2,874 square feet. Basically, our lot is larger, yet they want to build a larger house that does not follow rules. If part of their rationale for requesting the exemption to the FAR is family size, I would like to share that in my smaller home, I raised 4 kids. My aging grandfather and brother also lived with us, and 2 cats, 2 dogs. We all had plenty of space. I know the basement does not count towards FAR, but with their basement, they will have 4,450 square feet of living space. Why are they entitled to an extra 420 square feet, especially when the above grade mass of the proposed home is significantly impacting their immediate neighbors? Does this mean that moving forward, this will set a precedence that we no longer have to follow FAR laws in place? Is that, I'm done? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No, thank you. Next, I have Paul.
So yeah, I think it's
Sorry, can you just state your name for
I'm
the
Paul
record?
Tuckfield. I live in 162 Loma Alta.
Thank you.
And I just want to say I really didn't want to be here, but I'm glad that everybody's keeping the peace. So I intend to also. I just wanted to touch base on the chart that Blake put together. It's a list of houses. I saw it because I did my very best to really try to read this and see why they're trying to justify an extra 420 square feet. When they could already just have built a 4,000 square foot living space and not upset, and had a very good case to just not be entitled to an exception and upset so many people like that. Any case, that list that he made of all the houses, it doesn't even agree with the town's own list in like 5 different cases, including my house. And it differs by 5 feet in the square footage that's proposed in that chart. I know he's an engineer, all respect. I just think that you can't use that chart until somebody fact checks it because, respectfully, he's not a disinterested party. And I don't know that, and actually it didn't really, in earlier documents, the FAR code really wasn't computed correctly and quoted in the past on some of the original documents, so including my house. So, and in other errors in the documents, including my setbacks and other people's setbacks, plus inconsistent application of the different times when the homes were built, and leveling accusations at other people with 40-year-old homes rather than just justifying their own. So as I understand the FAR law, you have to justify that you're not to get first of all, they could have just built to within the FAR and there would have been a lot less acrimony, right? That's a pretty big house, and I think it's a pretty house too. But sadly, well, maybe not sadly, I don't know. They're choosing this process where they have to risk their plans getting denied. They are making that choice, and the burden of proof is on them, but somehow it seems to be shifted to the rest of the neighborhood to prove something, right? So the proof, as I understand it, has to be that they do not impact other people, but sadly, I couldn't find an actual definition of impact, right? I don't think you can put a bigger house on there even if it meets the FAR without impacting them, because I think it's going to kind of reduce people's property values. Why everybody's cheek by jowl, but I don't think that can really be avoided. But I don't think it has to be exacerbated by adding another 420 feet. You know, it just kind of bothers me because those plans were submitted to me months ago, and they exceeded it at that time, but I didn't bother to check. I didn't think anybody would want to subject themselves to such a process, right? But I signed their petition, right? And so now I'm finding out that they always exceeded the FAR by several hundred feet. And the plan all along was to exceed the FAR. They expanded it by still more to 900 and then reduced it. So now it seems like they reduced something in good faith, but really it's back to where it was to begin with, right? So it's just, I'm not really positive that they deserve to be exempt, right? So, yeah, I guess that's all I'm trying to say. All respect, you know,
Thank
that
you.
data has to
Thank
be
you. Your time
fact-checked.
is up.
Fact check it. That's all.
Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Thank you. The next I have is Tony. And you can, if you can come forward and state your name for the record. Thank you.
Evening, my name's Tony Alarcon. I live at 229 Johnson Avenue. My house abuts the alley, very familiar with it, familiar with the water drainage issues as well. That is one concern with this project. I'm also a real estate agent for Ontario Real Estate. I have 255 Johnson Avenue listed, which is the property adjacent to the subject property on the alley. I went and measured the alley tonight. It's 13 feet where they're at. In the comments, they had mentioned that 8 trees had been cut down. They cut down a 40-inch tree that was perfectly healthy. Why? That's where the garage is going to go. They cut down a 32-inch tree that was perfectly healthy. Why? That's where the garage is going. No permit. None. They broke the rules. The data that they're showing, data can be manipulated, and as a prior speaker just mentioned, I would like that data confirmed, because you can manipulate it saying that taking 16 properties and looking at FAR ratios, they're not taking into account the size of the lot, if there's an upslope, which there is across the street, if there's a, if it was built in 1930, if it was built in 1940, we built differently. Of course, this house is smaller because their house at 176 was built in 1954. Additionally, the fireplace location is adjacent to a tree canopy. We are already in an extremely high fire zone, and I believe that the fireplace should be moved to a location that is not adjacent to trees. That is a big problem. The common setback in the neighborhood is 5 to 8 feet. Current R1 zoning is 8-foot setback. I understand neighbors are at 5. That can be reasonable. We may want to consider changing to a 5-foot setback if we're going to follow that rule all the time. The alley is the biggest thing for me. 3-foot setback on the garage as well. You can look how they've manipulated that plan I just mentioned, cutting down the trees. So I would ask that, it seems to me what you do is you throw spaghetti against the wall. You ask for all these variances. 420 square feet of variance in size with the scale and mass of this property is not reasonable. We all know why they put the ADU there. It's so that they could say it's ADU by law in California, and we now don't have this massive house, even if it's underground, and we can't legally count it against the FAR ratio. But we know what the intent was, or at least I do, being in real estate. And so I would ask that you look at all their exceptions. What they're doing is they're going to throw 4 exceptions at you, thinking that you'll turn down 2. And they're hoping to get extra square feet. Do not approve the excess FAR ratio, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you. Next, I have John. Please state your name, and you will have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm John Panaghetti. I've lived on Loma Alta since 1963, first at 224, now at 198 since 1982. In that time, I've done construction twice, once after the earthquake in 1989, and then 10 years later, I did an addition. At both times, I had to maintain my design within the requirements for the FAR, for setbacks, for height restrictions, and I also had I forget what year it was, requirements as well. I also had to take into account neighbor considerations, which I did, and everything was resolved. So I'm hearing a lot of animosity and things, but we need to be reasonable and work with each other and take people's considerations into account. And also, I don't believe we should make any exceptions to things like FAR and setbacks. If I look at this property, typically in this neighborhood, which I walk multi-times daily, I see houses that have a natural side setback on one side due to a driveway. This house has a driveway right now, but as that seems to be removed, it takes the house and shoves it over towards the property line. So that natural setback on one side is eliminated, and I don't think that's reasonable. I also see what I would consider an imposing, kind of a looming facade. It sits close and it's tall. Typically, when I see houses that are taller in the neighborhood, there's a softening effect by porch roofs, by gabling, by other roofs on the second story that make it seem less imposing. And I think I would like to see that in the design. So I don't think it's a really good fit design-wise. We do have an eclectic neighborhood. It's not a cookie-cutter neighborhood in any regard, but this one needs some softening in the front. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you. Next, I have Kim.
Hi, my name is Kim Couchet. I live at 16900 Cypress Way, which is right at the top of Loma Alta. Winifred James is unable to attend in person because of mobility challenges. Maneuvering a walker in the rain, so she asked me to read her letter tonight at this meeting. This is the letter. My name is Winifred James, the previous owner of 176 Loma Alta Avenue. I lived in the house for 55 years. In the early 1970s, we remodeled the house from 700 some odd square feet to the present size of 996 square feet, while also leaving intact the detached garage. At the time of remodeling, we were very conscientious of the size of the lot and wanting to maintain the balance with the surrounding homes. Over the years, two-story homes have been built, maximizing the square footage for the size of the lot, this causing the loss of the charm of the neighborhood. At the time of the sale of my home, no matter the new owners, it was given the house would be remodeled into 2 stories, and the neighbors expected that. However, I think the objection is to the size of the buildings according to the present architectural plans. I am appalled at the size of the basement, 1,500 some odd square feet allowing the ADU. Where are these additional people going to park? Street parking is already crowded. I can only imagine the new house and garage are going to gobble up the land. Using the alley as the only access for vehicle use of the garage is not practical, as the alley is often blocked by other cars, garbage cans, and small storage sheds, etc. I am surprised the town issued permits to cut down trees on the property even before approving remodel plans are approved. Many years ago, I applied for a permit to remove 2 palm trees. The permit was denied, and the town gave me a partial refund. The money not refunded was going to be used to plant trees around the town. Thank you for listening to me, Winifred James. This is my part. I think Winifred James' sentiment is that any house over 1,000 square foot is too large. Of course, this is not reality, but she does make a good point. Homeowners have built homes to their maximum square footage, which is within their rights. The applicant originally submitted plans for significantly exceeded the FAR, and then resubmitted plans following the Planning Commission's recommendations still exceed the FAR, amongst other variances. The applicant has not outgrown this house. They came in with the intent of asking for variances, which impact the neighbors. I ask that you take into consideration the effect on the neighbors and listen to their concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Next, I have Phil. And please state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
My name is Phil Couchet. I live at 16900 Cypress Way. I'm Kim's husband. I've been living in this town going on 70 years. And I feel that over the years, the Planning Commission has done a very good job in maintaining the integrity of both the commercial and industrial sectors of our town, except for the dome on top of Chipotle. How that Roman cathedral ever got built, I'll never know. You know, it's interesting listening, if you ever follow the things I remember growing up on Los Gatos website, you'll listen to people growing up in the 50s and the 60s saying how the town of Los Gatos has changed. Thank goodness. Change is always going to happen, and it's good. And the town council and the planning commission has done a very good job in doing that by listening to the people that it affects. You know, the neighbors and the planning commission have expressed concerns about this project, and I urge you to listen to the concerns being raised. The original submittal was way above FAR. The resubmittal is way above FAR. I think you need to listen to the neighbors. And, you know, and just a comment on quite a few of the letters were written in favor of the project. If you're gonna cut and paste a letter, please use the town of Los Gatos, not the city, and not refer to you people as the city planners. You're the town planners. I urge you to take this into consideration and listen to the neighbors' concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Next, I have Matt.
Good evening. I'm Matt Brilo, and I live next door at 178 Loma Alta. We stated most of our concerns in our letter and spoke last time, so I'll try to keep my comments brief. The FAR is the big issue from our perspective. Basically, nothing has changed about the FAR above ground, which is what matters to neighbors, other than a 1-foot movement of the nook. I don't believe that's what the commission intended. That's not what I heard at the last meeting, and it certainly does nothing to address the concerns that we had. The mass and scale remains the same and is, is problematic from our perspective. The only other thing I just want to be clear about the discussions between us since the last commission hearing, not to go into too much detail, but we heard nothing from the applicants after the hearing for several weeks. So I reached out to Blake and suggested that we get together for a beer and maybe try to tone down the discussion and seek some sort of compromise. We went out of the barrel and had what I thought was a nice discussion. I explained very practically what is most upsetting to us about the plans, which is again, the size of the house, particularly toward the back, and he even, drew on a napkin like over here. Is this what you mean? So he understood very clearly what they could do to reduce the mass to make us supportive of the plan. We have no problem with them building a two-story house. Of course they can. We all have them now. But anyway, so I told him exactly what it was. We parted, and I hoped that we would, see a compromise. 3 weeks passed, I heard nothing. So then I followed up, like, shall we discuss again? At that point, he said, oh yes, we want to meet. We had some scheduling issues, but a few days later, we did meet. We asked, could we see plans before that? He said, no, we want to share them at the meeting. and Allison pulled from the town file that they had in fact filed plans already before we were having a meeting. At which point I said, what's the point of meeting if you've already filed your revised plans? And he said, no, we have some alternatives to propose or to discuss. We went to that meeting with our other neighbors, at which they showed us an entirely different proposal, which is, I guess, an alternative for them that involves lot splitting, et cetera, which is not a subject of this meeting, but we had no comment to that because it had nothing, to do with this proposal. So that's the sum and substance of communication, all of them initiated by us.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Barnett.
Can you elaborate on your statement that your concern is at the size of the house at the rear?
Yeah, basically the way that the mass of it manifests to our enjoyment of our property is that from the rear bedroom and from the kitchen, basically all light gets blocked. And I know someone mentioned there's no right to light or whatever, but this is the reason for the FAR is to not have these problems. So for us, if they moved the second floor forward and also inward, like as someone proposed, to sort of soften the impact, that would make a huge difference to how the effect of the house would be. And certainly, if 400 square feet were taken away from that part, this would be we wouldn't be here. So that's what I had suggested. That's what I had hoped we could discuss when the plans were refiled. Obviously, they made no such changes, and nothing was discussed about that. So.
Okay, I understand your position. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next speaker I have is Allison.
Hi, I'm Allison. I'm Matt's wife. I live next door at 178. I want to say thank you to the Planning Commission and the town staff for all the time they had to have spent on this packet and all the letters that were written. I appreciate all your time. My understanding from the unanimous direction from all of you at the last meeting was for the applicants to propose changes and share them with us. The most recently submitted plans were neither shared nor discussed and do not offer any noticeable changes. The context is what we're talking about. So all these comparisons don't take into consideration the context and how it's affecting the neighbors, and that's why we're here talking to you and asking for this. There's no new evidence to change the size of their lot or the excessive size of the proposed structure, which still exceeds the FAR. Additionally, there's no evidence that the applicants have at any point shared actual proposals in response to neighbors' concerns. The claim is that one neighbor didn't provide enough suggestion while the other neighbor was too demanding. And for these reasons, they were unable to find compromise with anyone. In our last meeting with the applicants, the plans presented were unrelated to this proposal and instead showed a plan to split the lot and develop investment properties, which simply isn't the issue at hand, which is why we had no questions for them at that March 2nd meeting. That was all that was presented to us. I believe many homeowners have willingly and successfully worked with their neighbors to come to an agreement on similar matters, and I assume that the applicant's experienced architect has been a participant in this type of exchange for other clients in the past. The structure is far too large for the lot that it sits on and negatively impacts the neighbors due to its exceptions. My statement at the last meeting ended with a request for reasonable and equitable application of the guidelines and allowances as to the above ground FAR. And I'm asking for the same tonight from the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No, thank you. Next, I have Mary Ann.
Thank you to the members of the council. I'm here to speak on behalf of Blake and Jessica Thornberry. My name is Mary Ann Carr. I'm a resident of Los Gatos for over 60 years, and I have been a resident living in the Bellwood area for over 53 years. I had the honor of living immediately next door to Jessica, Blake, and their children for several years. And I was brokenhearted when they announced that they were going to be moving to be close to downtown Los Gatos. I'm going to be 80 on Friday, and as I get older, it's important to me personally who lives near me. And during the years that we were neighbors, Jessica and Blake extended amazing kindness to me, making sure I was okay, taking out my garbage, caring for common fences that might have fallen down during terrible storms, trimming trees that affected both of our properties, and even taking a dead rat out of my backyard once I was too afraid to touch. When they moved, they invited me to see their home, and I was taken aback that when I entered their 900 square foot home, I realized how much they were about to sacrifice living in such tight quarters with their 3 children. I learned that they were about to design a home that was aesthetically pleasing to the community that they so much wanted to join. And during the years that we were neighbors, what impressed me most about this young couple was, despite being working parents, they took time to become advocates for street calming on Blossom Hill Road for our entire neighborhood of 250 people, homes. We experienced 2 deadly accidents on Blossom Hill Road. One was a young mother who lived on our street, and another was a young college student. The young mother had become good friends with Jessica, so Jessica was overcome with grief. Blake and Jessica took action by spending hours gathering critical data about increased traffic patterns and potential suggestions for change. They disseminated the information to our community. They facilitated our community involvement, keeping us posted on actions so our voices would be heard. They were both spokespersons here at all town meetings, and since they left, no one has taken up the charge. We have experienced 2 more accidents on Blossom Hill Road that I have personally witnessed. As a long-term resident of Los Gatos, I have seen people come and go in our neighborhood, and change is hard. But what would happen each time a young family moves into our neighborhood and starts remodeling? Our home values go up, they update our community, they enhance the appearance of the homes that were built in 1965. They have renewed happiness to our community. And during the pandemic, 7 homes on our street were being remodeled. And rather than protest the change, we decided to have a wine walk, and we opened up our homes to share the changes that were being made. It brought our community closer, and it made us realize that being open-minded and caring, we all win. I'm here tonight just to say that I hope you...
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? The next speaker card I have is for Joan. Please just come forward and state your name and speak into the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Joan Gardner, and I'm speaking as a member of the community at large. I do not think the Thornberrys are being treated fairly. Decisions made by Los Gatos city planners and the Planning Commission are expected to be based on facts and identifiable and objectively measured parameters. They're not expected to be based on emotional pleas concerning items these bodies are not empowered to regulate. The city planners concluded that or I should say the town planners, concluded that the proposed setbacks of 176 Loma Alta are compatible with the neighborhood, given the preponderance of non-conforming lots. As the Thornberrys have documented, their proposed setbacks, as well as their overall house size, FAR, height, and size of their lot, are all within the range of what neighboring homes have. These are the types of issues the Planning Commission is empowered to judge. In addition, there's widespread sentiment that the proposed home is indeed a lovely one and in keeping with neighborhood styles. Neighbors living close to 176 Loma Alta have enjoyed the benefits of living near the smallest house in the neighborhood for many years. They've gotten used to it and take some of the advantages it has conferred for granted. This is normal, it's understandable. People often resist change. But it becomes a problem when people feel attached to keeping the benefits of living next door to such a small house and view it as something they're entitled to. As was detailed in submitted documents, Blake and Jessica reached out to their neighbors last fall and received endorsements from many and lack of objection from the others. However, just prior to the first Planning Commission meeting in January, and unbeknownst to Blake and Jessica, their immediate neighbors made efforts to undermine their prior outreach. The objections largely amount to wanting to deny Blake and Jessica the exceptions for their non-conforming lot that most of their neighbors already enjoy. It's only fair for the city planning process to consider objections for items which are either out of line with either building guidelines or precedent. But when the majority of the other nearby neighbors with non-conforming lots presently enjoy multiple exceptions to current guidelines, then the refusal to grant similar exceptions in this case can easily be construed as biased and as a non-fact-based process that is discriminatory. The Thornberry's proposal for their home on 176 Loma Alta should be approved.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you. The next speaker card I have is you. Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Planning committee members. My name is Yu Chen. I live at 325 Johnson Avenue. I walk a dog every day on Johnson and Loma Alta, and the 176. The structure is an eyesore, which many of my neighbors are here that we all know. So when the new family, Jessica and Blake, are coming in, and I was very excited that they're gonna build a new house to improve our community. I read the design proposals. I feel the design aligns very well with the neighborhood character. The homeowners and their architect, as you can see from the previous presentations, they have worked very hard to ensure the design fits the neighborhood harmoniously. And the exception they are requesting basically is very similar to those granted to other homes already. So, but the project unfortunately faced organized opposition that you just heard earlier. Basically saying they are blocking a very fair and artistic design that basically is to improving our community. What troubles me most is the inconsistency. The applicants, as the data you have seen here, that the house isn't the biggest in floor area or height and matches the setbacks of its neighbors. So if other homeowners have benefit from similar exceptions, why is this one being denied? This double standard raises concerns about fairness and equal treatment. Las Gatos town should be a place of inclusivity, where no personal bias create artificial barriers. We cannot, something like not in my backyard kind of mindset hold us back. As previous speaker talked about, change is hard, but for our town to thrive, we needed to support thoughtful development. The project simply brings the smallest home on the street up to the neighborhood average. It's a very reasonable change. I think the selective opposition divides us because we are all good neighbors, and it's kind of created this division that nobody want to see. I think by approving this project, it will strengthening our community. So I'm requesting for everybody's interest to first apply rules fairly, and then see how the value brings, and then reject unfair opposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you. The next card I have is for Shelby.
Hello, good evening. I'm Shelby Roshan, and I've been a homeowner in Los Gatos for 18 years next month. I'm here in support of Jessica and Blake Thornberry, who were my wonderful neighbors on Bellevue Drive for the majority of that time. So what I want to do is talk about the facts, and I'm certain that you all, commissioners, will be fact-checking as was recommended. But from what I understand and what I've read in the architectural diagrams is the town's floor area ratio, the FAR, as we've all heard, the standard is 0.330. Consider this though. At 172 Loma Alto, the FAR is listed at 0.36 according to the calculations currently on file. At 178 Loma, that calculation is 0.406. Both are exceeding the standard. Both properties on either side of the proposed construction, they already exceed allowable FAR according to those calculations. In fact, as we heard, the Thornberry's proposed home would rank 7th out of 16 when you stack rank all those homes. It's right in the middle of that stack ranking. So clearly, if these calculations are correct, which I believe they are actually in line with the neighborhood. So why do we have this double standard for the Thornberrys? How can the neighbors object when their own homes exceed those same guidelines? I'm certain that Blake would be more than happy and welcome you to check the architectural diagrams and comparator data that they've brought this evening from their architect. But what bothers me is that these neighbors in my own community stand here in judgment, accusing my friends, the Thornberrys, of violating the rules when their own properties are also in clear violation of that 0.330 FAR. It seems to me like these neighbors shouldn't be throwing stones from their own glass houses. So let's be clear. FAR is a guideline. It's not an unbreakable rule. That's why 9 homes on Loma Alta surpass that number. The town here regulates and the town here regulations, they prioritize compatibility as I understand it. And the Thornberrys plan fits seamlessly within that neighborhood. So for those of you that have taken the time to see the Thornberrys proposal, you will undoubtedly agree that it's more than compatible. And assuming those FAR calculations are correct, this should really be a non-issue for them. But if you're still concerned, consider this. The proposed house, as we heard, is 2,874 square feet. And as we know, space below grade doesn't count toward FAR. If they remove the basement, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No, thank you. The next speaker card I have is Ion.
Good evening, the members of Planning Commission. My name is Ayhan Mutlu. I'm an immediate neighbor right across them at 177 Loma Alta, and I'm here today to express my strong support for the revised plans at 176 Loma Alta, and I urge the Commission to approve the proposed changes. I have reviewed the supplemental documents and staff report, and I noticed an inaccuracy in FAR calculations. My home's FAR was listed at 0.34, it is actually 0.45. So the proposed home is comparable in bulk and its scale to its immediate neighbors, and it should be reviewed with accurate data and objective criteria. I believe that Blake and Jessica have made thoughtful and meaningful revisions to address concerns raised by the immediate neighbors. They have been exceptional neighbors working in good faith to modify their plans while maintaining a reasonable and well-designed home. Just for the record, I have received their plans on February 23rd before their submission to the city. So I don't know what happened with the other neighbors, but they did send me their plans on February 23rd. The key revisions they have made include reducing the house height by 6 inches, reducing the size of the nook, increasing the setback to 178, and then converting the basement to ADU. So this basement is being brought up a lot, but eliminating the, it's just the basement itself, whether there's a room there or not, it's not going to change the structure of the home because the building is on a slope. So they have to have that space anyway. So, having that basement or converting ADU or I think it's just, I'm kind of surprised that people objecting to it, even if there's nothing there, the structure will be same. And then adding privacy vegetation between neighbors to mitigate privacy concerns. So And this, again, this house is comparable in bulk and scale to the immediate neighbors, and it is unfortunate that the opposition to this project appears to be well organized against it. I urge everyone to approach this with a reason. If your goal is to find faults, you will always find something. However, the reality is that any two-story home will have the same impact on its neighbors as this one. The concerns being raised should be reviewed within a reasonable and fair framework rather than just as obstacles simply prevent the progress. At the end of the day, we are all neighbors and we will be living next to each other for many years to come. Instead of making unreasonable demands, we should try to be more accommodating and not to ask our neighbors to give up something that we ourselves have. So I ask the Planning Commission to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Thank you. The next speaker I have is Wendy.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Squire. I live at 198 Loma Alta Avenue. John is my husband. And I'm speaking in regards to the neighborhood. A neighborhood is a place where everyone gathers. It's a community. We all look out for each other. We all take care of each other. And we all are in consideration of each other's needs. I've heard a lot of things brought up today. When Blake and Jessica and their kids moved into the neighborhood, I welcomed them. I think they're wonderful people. I'm surprised by all of the arguing that's gone on, but I will say something. I want to echo what this gentleman said, which is we should not create things that inhibit or damage the enjoyment of home. So therefore, our neighbors, I am not at all against having a new house built in, even though I can't say I agree that Winifred's little house is an eyesore. It's small. It's a shingle house. But it's certainly not an eyesore. And I do not question at all wanting to put a two-story house into a neighborhood which already has many two-story houses. But I would ask the commission to consider not only the structure of the house, but the impact of the neighborhood for all concerned.
Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you. The next speaker card I have is for Fred.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Fred Gerbino, and I live at 116 Alta Heights Court. It's on the corner of Alta Heights
Sorry,
Court.
Mr. Gerbino, you can move the microphone if you need to.
Okay.
So yeah, there you go. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So I live on the corner of Alta Heights Court and Loma Alta. So we're across the street from the project and down two houses, which would probably be to the west. We moved into our house in 2001, and it was a tiny bungalow. And after 4 or 5, 6 years of living in the tiny bungalow, we decided we wanted to make a remodel. So we hired a good architect, and we revised our plans 3 times to be in compliance with the fire requirements. So I'm here only to object to exception to the fire. I feel the applicant should have to comply with the same fire rules that we complied with. They're certainly entitled to seek an exemption and roll the dice and see if they can get what they're seeking. But I don't see any compelling reason in this matter to grant an exemption to the fire requirements. I'm not here to resist change or make any emotional plea. I'm here making an objective statement and asking you to ask the applicants to comply with the existing law. Nothing emotional about it. Thank you very much.
Thank Are there any questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next speaker will be Thomas.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Valencia. I live at 172 Loma Alta, next door to the project. It is important to note that the data in the presentation was not compiled by an unbiased third party. Measurements were not fully conducted by a licensed or qualified surveyor, and they were compiled by the applicant. And upon closer examination, the data are disingenuous and imprecise, predominantly skewed to support the applicant. Instead of spending time focusing on the impacts of this proposed project, a lot of effort was spent in finding reasons why they deserve to make those impacts. And instead of asking the town for exceptions to be made, they are implying those exceptions are guaranteed. There are differences between the town's data and the county data in regard to setbacks, FAR, and other measurements called out. County regulations are different than specific town regulations, and town building codes and regulations change and evolve. There are numerous unknown details about the plotted lots, such as build dates, hillsides, etc. Cherry-picking data as a reason for exceptions to be granted should not be entertained. It's a slippery slope if the town allows this type of building mentality. One person gets exceptions granted, and then it could be expected every time. The goals of the town should not be in support of propagating exceptions that allow homes to encroach upon safety, privacy, and impacts on aesthetics of existing homes. Our concerns of this project have remained the same from the start, and they were brought up in the last town meeting and during meetings with the applicant throughout the process. FAR, it's over the limit even with a vast basement and ADU exemptions. Setbacks, related to the chimney, further reduced setback of under 5 feet, as well as its location under an existing tree. Height, due to the maximum height, mass, and reduced setbacks of the above-grade structure, shade studies show a detrimental impact to neighboring homes for the majority of the year. Privacy related to placement of windows. The exact placement of these windows are unknown, but they should be known in order to properly mitigate any encroachment of privacy. Someone's word is not sufficient enough. Fire risk. As a follow-on, if the applicant is choosing not to adjust setbacks and windows and instead is suggesting to put tall vegetation immediately between the two close homes, this is not only inadequate, but likely a fire hazard. If anyone is at a disadvantage, it is the existing homes and longtime homeowners that were held to restrictions and guidelines of the time that they were building. To summarize the applicant's response letter, we don't feel we have to change anything. And that is what was told to the immediate neighbors at the last meeting when they revealed they had submitted plans and were moving forward with them. If the plans were not approved, they would make it an investment property, implying it would be worse for us in the town. As we stand now, they did not make appropriate adjustments to be within the guidelines, and they did not work with the neighbors to adequately address concerns. I still think there's time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? For the speaker, I'm sorry. Yes, Commissioner Stump.
Thomas, I'm sorry. Could you repeat your address again for me?
172.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker I have is Kelly.
Hello, good evening. My name is Kelly Garton, and I am the homeowner of 172 Loma Alta Avenue, the property immediately adjacent to the proposed project. My father purchased the property at 172 in 1980 and remodeled in 1990 to the structure that stands today. Shortly after the January planning meeting, the applicant reached out and we met in person on 2 occasions to further discuss the concerns brought up by the commissioners and neighbors that impacted my property. The interactions were productive and cordial. A follow-up email from the applicant outlined our collective feedback, such as clarity of height of the proposed structure relative to my home, as well as window placement in the proposed stairwell projecting into my bathroom and bedroom. In the email, the applicant specifically called out the removal of the chimney to preserve the already reduced 5-foot setback. After a month of no updates, the applicant reached out in the middle of a workday to see if we and the other adjacent neighbors were available to meet within 15 minutes. As it was a workday, none of us were available to meet, and a later date was set based on the applicant's and neighbors' availability. The applicants never responded to my request of sharing the revised plans ahead of meeting. Later the same day, I found the revised plans had already been provided to the town and uploaded for public viewing, plans I had never seen before. However, I remained open to still meeting as the applicant mentioned there were alternate plans to discuss. Again, the applicants refused to share the alternate plans ahead of the meeting. When we all met in person, the applicants stated that they were moving forward with the already submitted plans, and in their view, they adequately addressed all concerns. Instead, they shared their alternate plans. If the current revised plans were to be denied, the lot would be an investment property, a split lot, high-density housing. At this time, given the applicants were unwilling to modify their current plans, there was nothing more to discuss. From the beginning, for my property, the chimney and window placement have been concerns. Without story poles, it was not evident until after re-reviewing the full plans alongside the initial staff report that the proposed structure was more massive and higher than interpretable on printed plans. Today, I share the same concerns. Chimney location, it remains within under 5-foot reduced setback and is still proposed under a tree canopy. Window privacy, specifically to master bathroom and bedroom, revised plans do not denote obscured glass, nor any third-party report to confirm no impact to these private spaces, no offer to shift, resize, or remove a window. Height, although the proposed home detrimentally shades my home and surrounding environment throughout the year, the applicant does not find it justifiable to lower the height. FAR, despite current California and town codes, allowing exemptions of basement and repurposed ADU space, the proposed home remains well above the permissible FAR by 17%. All excess square footage is located above grade and in the main residence, significantly impacting the adjacent homes. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Yeah, you can go first, Commissioner Burnett.
Yeah, the applicant has proposed planting cypress trees of a height of 8 to 10 feet. Is that not acceptable to you?
I think it's inadequate. We're talking about second-story privacy. It's not sufficiently high enough, and there were existing trees there, but they had to be cut down because of fire policy.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question about the fireplace chimney. Can you elaborate on your concerns with that?
Yes, we have a large, mature Chinese elm closer to 176, but it provides its main canopy over my home, over the front yard, and part of the canopy is on the 176 side. Where they're proposing the chimney, it's right in the middle of that canopy.
Okay, so you're just mostly concerned about the physical contact.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. The next speaker will be Lisa.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm representing the community at large as well, as someone else did earlier. Kind, respectful, friendly, approachable, helpful, considerate, communicative, and trustworthy. These are the hallmarks of a good neighbor. My name is Lisa, and these are the qualities that immediately come to mind when I think of Jessica and Blake Thornberry. As a Los Gatos native and current resident, I've had the privilege of living in several wonderful neighborhoods, each fostering a strong sense of community. While moving has always been difficult, the bonds forged with my neighbors and the feeling of safety they provided have always been invaluable. Although I've never lived in the same neighborhood as the Thornberrys, our friendship began when they moved next door to my mother. Over the past decade, their kindness, welcoming spirit, and good nature have solidified our bond. It brought me immense peace of mind knowing my mother could always rely on Blake and Jessica. Whether it was collecting packages, helping with heavy waste bins, or facilitating heartwarming visits from the children with their drawings for Granny Mac, they were always there. Their vigilance and monitoring for suspicious activity and communicating with both the neighborhood and law enforcement ensured everyone's safety. Their commitment to the community extended beyond individual acts. Following a tragic fatal accident of a neighbor, friend, and mother, they led the neighborhood's efforts to advocate for pedestrian safety and traffic control on Blossom Hill Road. Despite demanding careers and raising 3 young children, they prioritized their family and community involvement. Their move to Loma Alta was a thoughtful decision, bringing the kids closer to their grandparents and downtown amenities, allowing for walkability and biking to trails, schools, and community events. Now, Jessica and Blake are focused on enhancing their property, working closely with a talented local architect who understands Los Gatos' building guidelines and the importance of preserving the town's historical charm. They've also demonstrated their commitment to neighborly collaboration by sharing their plans door to door and incorporating feedback into multiple revisions. Ultimately, being a good neighbor elevates our entire community, fostering a culture of kindness and compassion. So please be a good neighbor and support the Thornberry's family's proposal for a modest and tasteful home, a project that will enhance your property values and our pride in Los Gatos. I urge the commission to approve their plans moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. The next speaker card I have is for Patricia.
Hi, I'm Patricia James, and I live at 253 Johnson Avenue, which is diagonally behind off the alleyway. If we were having no alleyway, our corners would touch with the Thornberries. I'm a big fan of FAR. We're in a small house on a small lot. Our next door neighbors are on a big lot and completely rebuilt their house 2 years ago. It's a much bigger house, and it's beautiful. And we were able to do this, like they wanted a couple of exceptions, but not to FAR. I believe that FAR is really what makes Los Gatos special. You know, the FAR and the arborist requirements allow us to maintain the character of the town and the character of our neighborhood. So we have a next door neighbor who completely rebuilt their house. It's beautiful. We discussed a few things that they wanted for exceptions with windows, with a little porch. It was all, they made some modifications. They're lovely people, and we don't have to trade off good relations and having wonderful neighbors with accepting 420 extra square feet in their house. And I think it was super well thought out that we have FAR and that we have our requirements to check with an arborist before we remove trees. And I just ask, why don't we reject the plans that exceed FAR? Because what it's leading to is this kind of argument back and forth. And I think it would be better for neighborly relations not to even consider plans that exceed FAR. Because in keeping to FAR, we can have trees on our properties. We have something bigger than, you know, we have more land than we have house. And it's why we have such a lovely town. So I urge you to keep the guidance of the FAR, not to exceed it, and just, you know, remember that's what keeps our town special. We have beautiful redwood trees. We have lovely lots with lovely homes. This home would be just as lovely if it was 420 square feet less. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you. The next speaker I have is Lee.
Good evening. My name is Lee Quintana. I'm a member of the Historical Preservation Committee, but I am speaking as a community member. And I will say that I am not a resident of this neighborhood, but I do have some thoughts on this project. Number one is, before I forget, the question of the cypress trees. I looked up cypress trees. They are probably the highest fire risk of any debris that is available to be built, to be used, both because of the flammability of the tree itself, but also because of all the needles that collect underneath the tree. In addition, the trees are being proposed to be placed in a setback of 5 feet, which again, my understanding is there should be no vegetation between the house and 5 feet out from the house for fire reasons. Secondly, the issue to me is two things. One, keep the comparisons consistent. So we compare homes 2, 2, and 5 across the street, not 16. So I urge you to keep your comparison to what is normally looked at. Secondly, the FAR is not an absolute, but it is used as a guideline for what would be the absolute maximum unless there are other circumstances. If you, in this particular case, while the house meets the height setbacks, the length of the roof line causes it to have a much more massive appearance. The town's architect said that the massing of the house in the front was not consistent with the neighborhood, and that if the town was okay with that, then he would make his other comments. The town apparently was not okay because they recommended denial of the project partially based on its mass. So that gets back to the FAR. If you brought down the FAR, likely you would not be having any problems with the compatibility of the home with the neighborhood. So I really urge you to take all of these things into consideration and do not approve the project as presented.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Oh, shoot. Did I have any?
You had 5 seconds, I think.
Okay. The representation of the FAR as 1/3 is incorrect. That is a FAR that's used for commercial. For other residential, it's a sliding scale.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, so I have no more speaker cards for item number 2. So if you are a member of the public and you wish to speak, this is your last opportunity. Okay, we will now hear from the applicant again.
There's no.
Oh, is there anyone on Zoom? Thank you. Thanks. Okay. With no one on Zoom, then Mr. Thornberry, I believe you will be speaking, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just want to preface my comments by first saying that the divisiveness that this process has brought about is extremely regrettable. This has been really hard on my family. We've loved this town for its sense of community. Jessica and I moved to Los Gatos 10 years ago, and we've grown to a family of 5, not including Jessica's parents, which live here in town also. 2 years ago, we bought a house on Loma Alta so we could be closer to the downtown community and schools. If I'm being honest, there's easier ways to develop this property outside of this forum here, but we felt our plan for a single-family home was entirely compatible with the houses already in the neighborhood. Since the last meeting, I've spent many hours collecting data. I poured through all the construction documents available in the town's microfiche. I spent hours there. I conducted a field survey, have a surveying transit. In many cases, I found the data in the staff report to be either outdated or incorrect, and that's why I did it myself. So if anybody wants to go get the data, you can go to the microfiche, it's here. The data I collected is all available publicly. The town guidelines state a proposal may exceed the guidelines when the lot coverage, setbacks, and FAR of the proposed project is compatible with the development on surrounding lots. The data I collected clearly shows our proposal to be compatible. We're proposing a home that is very average in the context of the 15 surrounding neighbors. The size of our lot is average. It's not large, it's not small. Much has been said about our FAR, but it's worth noting that both of our adjacent neighbors also exceed the FAR guidelines. In fact, the neighbors at 178 have an FAR of 0.41, which is greater than the 0.39 that we're requesting. The 5-foot setbacks we're proposing are exactly the same nominal setbacks that our neighbors have with us, despite the fact that when we surveyed their houses, we found their setbacks to be less than 5 feet. The height of our house is also average. 3 of the immediate neighbors have heights greater than or equal to our proposal. Despite these facts, since the last meeting, we've reduced the square footage of our home. We've improved the setbacks with the neighbors, and we've reduced the height of the house. Our outreach with the neighbors started almost 2 years ago when we moved into the small house with our family of 5. We made an effort to live in the community and get to know the neighbors. We made no secret of our plans to improve the lot. We didn't want to be anonymous owners renting the house or leaving it vacant only to show up when it was time to place a development placard in the front yard. We met in good faith with the neighbors over countless hours. Unfortunately, the exceptions that they are objecting to are all exceptions that they enjoy themselves. I humbly ask the Planning Commission to approve our design based on the data and facts of our proposal, especially in the context of the existing neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure that we will have questions, so we'll start with Mr. Stump.
If you could clarify, what is your total square foot reduction?
I believe it was 23 feet, but so in the top, and then we were asking for an exception before, so it was coming down from, I don't have the number right in front of me, but it was 400-ish something feet, I think, total.
More, okay.
Plus like the 770 on the ADU, right? Like, so total is like 700, like almost 800 square footage overall.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have questions? No. Okay. Well, I do have a few questions. First of all, if one of your neighbors had a concern about the chimney impeding on the with the tree canopy, just because of the height of that tree canopy.
Right.
And I know that Mr. Platt explained in the documents that, and your wife in the opening, that you would be willing to remove that. Is that like possible to remove as a, is it because it is an architectural feature? Can you still have a fireplace on the inside, or is that something that you are interested in doing?
I think it's all kind of like a facade, really. It's a gas fireplace, so it's not like the traditional fireplace. I think it softens up that kind of edge of the house, so I do think it looks nicer with the chimney there. Their tree does come over into our property, so I mean our chimney does go up there. If it is going to be that much of an issue that we can't, if with the setback concern, we can remove it, but I really don't think it's going to be a fire risk. I think it looks nice to have it there to soften up that wall of the house. But if it's such an issue, we're amenable to removing it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. And then I guess my question for probably Mr. Platt is just about how high this. I mean, is it a possibility to just reduce the height of the chimney part? I'm not sure. Like, what would look weird architecturally, or is that? Thank you.
It's purely an architectural feature of an Italianate house, a Victorian house. So we can have a fireplace that's this far off the ground with no chimney because it's gas. It's a direct vent. The chimney is only there for decoration. It doesn't serve any other purpose. But we can still have a fireplace that is maybe 5 feet off the ground with the same setback. That would work. Pushing it in to the house would just chew up so much of the space that we just wouldn't do it at that point. That makes sense.
Yes, and then the height. I guess my question is really about like the height of the chimney. Is there something that?
Yeah, that can come down. It's already shown at a minimal height. There's no code requirement because it's just a decoration. So it can come all the way down to the first floor, halfway up, only a half a story.
Okay. Okay. Yes, thank you. Anyone else have any? Okay. Commissioner Burnett.
Yes, thank you. This might. So if cypress trees are a problem in that area because they tend to be like a matchstick, And with 5 feet planting, what would be your response to that? I mean, what?
I got done removing, when we first purchased the property, I removed a ton of bamboo from it by hand, so I'm not really too keen to plant more bamboo along the property. I think, you know, if we have to do, we have double hung windows, and again, if the cypress trees can't be accommodated, then I mean, there's some, I think we can work on something with either the windows, the shading, like frosted windows or something. I think that's fine.
Thank you.
And then I do have a follow-up question to that. What tree, where the cypress were planned to be planted, what sort of canopy is that under?
I don't believe it's under any canopy right now.
That's on the other side that there's...
Are you referring to if we were going to plant the cypress trees beneath the canopy of an existing tree?
Of an existing tree? Is that like, isn't there a large, like redwood that's kind of over on that side?
Yeah. I think it's further enough away from the road, so it's not directly underneath the canopy of the redwoods. I think if you're referring to the redwoods at the front of the house, then
it would be farther towards the backyard.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
so there would be possibilities to plant a different something else, but the setback is okay.
Yeah, we haven't really gone through all the landscaping, like we can find some shrubbery that satisfies that requirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Afterward, yeah, we will. Okay, so my final question is just about the windows. I know that in the first hearing, you know, we made a recommendation that you go back to the neighbors and everything with regards to that. And that wasn't really, I didn't feel like addressed in the new plans that were submitted. So can you just kind of go over what the window situation is going to be and the stairwell and or some of the privacy concerns in that part of the house?
Can I show you this this is analysis I did? Do you want to pass it on?
I think it needs to be shown by everyone or to everyone. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So this is something that there's multiple copies of it. So Blake, can you bring that up? So there's what we showed on like the windows for 172 side. We talked about this multiple times. Like Kelly and Tom said, we did talk about the window multiple times, and this is why we think this is not an issue. It's because like on the first floor, we're gonna shield it with the privacy fence or shrubbery or whatever, and then the second floor, so second floor, this window right here is the kids' bedroom, and it does not face any windows on their side. And then this window here is on top of the stairway, that does not face any window on their side. This one is on top of the stairway, but like the stairway goes up like this. So this is like where you go, we will see, this is my stairway. Here is where that window is, and that's the one that they're concerned that look into their bathroom. Unless I climb on a 20-foot ladder, I won't be able to see them. Like that's why we think like this is not a concern. And then with the privacy screen here, that's definitely not a concern.
Okay, so for the first story is the screening, and then the second story, that window in the stairwell is up high.
Yeah, it's like it's here. The stairwell goes here, and that window is here.
Okay.
So that's why we told them this multiple times, but they never accepted it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant at this time? Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Burnett.
When the house was placed on the lot, is that the furthest back that the house could be to reduce the feeling of the volume of it, or the?
Are you talking about, are you referring to moving it towards like the front of the house to open up the backyards, or place it towards the rear of the lot?
Well, when you look at the lots, your home is definitely further back, except for the house next door. Yours is just a little forward. But the placement of the home on the lot, could have been brought further back towards the alley part of that? Not by the alley, but...
Yeah, I think that's an option, but like I think that will block like the neighbors. When we design it, we don't want to be blocking too much of what the neighbors can see, and also we want to be aligned with everybody else. We don't want to be the only house that's like protruding so far back in there, and that's why I was showing the rear projection slides that I was showing. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, our house is located kind of on a pie shape, and the house is located on the small part of the pie, the narrow part, which isn't ideal. But if we were to, I mean, yeah, it makes everything really tight and cramped. But if we were to push that house to an area of the lot where there's more real estate, right, it would exacerbate the concerns of the other neighbors on 178, because we're exacerbating that situation even more. So it's, we wanted to kind of, if you go out, if all of these houses, if you go into the backyard, everybody's kind of in a line in a row, and we're trying to kind of maintain that uniformity in the houses.
Yeah, we also thought about like putting the house like a little bit more, squeeze it more forward as well, but that will make us set back even smaller, and I don't think the neighbor will want that. And that's we went through so much thought into this, and the place that we have right now is where we think is the optimal.
And then second question, the garage, is that next to the alley? So it's positioned under code, or the setback for the garage, is that? I was just wondering the placement of the garage.
On the side of the neighborhood, there's various examples that are cited on sheet A 1.1, and the house next door at 178 almost has a zero setback to its rear property line, or the accessory structure that they have is almost on the property line, so closer than ours.
I actually grew up at 188 Loma Alta.
What's that?
I grew up at 188 Loma Alta. My grandparents.
No, 178.
Well, I grew up at 188.
Oh, you grew up there. I got you.
And we had two lots, 188 and 190 Loma Alta, and the garage was in the back, and it was a wonderful street. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so we will now, thank you very much. Thank you for answering all those. We will now close the public portion of the public hearing on item number 2, and I invite commissioners to ask questions of staff, provide comments, and then eventually propose a motion. Commissioner Stump.
Question to staff. Are we basically enforcing defensible space guidelines as a part of development projects? In other words, the first zone in defensible space, which is zone 0 to 5 feet, is supposed to be hardscape. Literally no landscaping. Now that may not be our standard. That's basically within the state code. So my question is, do we basically require hardscape within 5 feet of the house?
Thank you for the question. The simple answer is no. Fire reviews these, and they also do not require zone 0 currently. So those are issues that are always in talks, and that's obviously the optimal situation. But in these various situations, that's not always something that is required by county fire.
I have a few questions that I just want to clarify. So, first of all, I just want to confirm that we can't take the previous whether or not trees were cut down into consideration today?
That would be a separate process, and that would be pursued by filing a complaint with the town arborist, and then there are penalties for tree removal without a permit, but that's a separate process from considering a planning application.
Okay, thank you. And then, okay, yeah, I have some comments too, but I'll let Commissioner Barnett go with our questions for
I
staff.
have two questions. Two questions for staff. With respect to the request for the exception on the FAR, is the only finding compatibility with the neighborhood under 2940.075C? 2. Or are there findings that we would need to make?
There's two findings that would need to be made. The first is that the design theme, sense of scale, exterior materials, and details of the proposed project are consistent with the provisions of the Landmark and Historic Preservation Overlay Zone and the adopted residential development standards. And then the second finding is the lot coverage, setbacks, and FAR of the proposed project are compatible with the development on surrounding lots.
And as to the first element, is that applicable to tonight's application?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
With that question, I would just like to, as a follow-up, confirm the houses that are in the immediate neighborhood, because the numbering on the street is a little funky because it's an older neighborhood. So, do we have the ability to do that? I mean, I think I identified them, but I just would like to confirm if we can.
What staff considers the immediate neighborhood is in the table in the staff report.
So with regards to the immediate neighborhood compatibility with the 2 on either side and the 3 across the street.
It's not 3 across the street.
Okay.
5 across the street.
5, 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah, 5 across the street. So that isn't there an extra one on here? Oh, it's the old one. Never mind. Sorry. Thank you. Any other questions for staff right now? Okay. Commissioner Barnett.
Can staff comment on the issue of window visibility according to the chart that's been presented to us?
Staff hasn't reviewed the chart that's been presented to you, to my knowledge. I'm not sure if we've seen this before. Ms. Chavarine? Yes, thank you. Yeah, we have not seen that till this evening.
I see, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? I can kick it off with kind of discussion. Okay. So as we know, we can't make decisions based on past decisions, but it is a funny situation to be in sometimes because we are making decisions about overall neighborhood compatibility. So, and so that's what we can take into account. And so I think that looking at in the staff report with this immediate neighborhood compatibility and with regards to some of the setback situations, I find that with regards to the setbacks, the way that the lot is configured, and I believe I don't feel like my opinions have significantly changed since our first hearing on this. I think that I couldn't make the findings that this is to grant that exception with regards to the setbacks because of the neighborhood compatibility and the overall situation. I am curious to see what other commissioners have to say. I do want to hear what everyone thinks about the FAR, considering that at this point it is at 0.39, which is above the maximum FAR for this property. However, there are it is less than the original. We asked them to decrease it, and they did. And there are other houses that are under the FAR and a significant number of houses that are at the FAR and above the FAR in this immediate neighborhood. So I'm curious what other commissioners think. Commissioner Raspy.
Thank you, Chair. I'll give you just some thoughts on what I think were the outstanding issues. So if you recall, the reason we got here was we were presented with this project, and the Planning Commission was dissatisfied, I think, with several aspects of it as listed in the report. FAR, I think, being probably the major issue, but there were several others. And so taking those in turn, per my notes. So on FAR, we have, it appears, many figures from many different sources. And I think, as one speaker indicated, we can use them to support any base case. But I'm going to rely on the figures that staff has provided to us, which indicate that when we saw this project last time, the square footage was 3,418, I think above ground. And now it's been reduced to 2,874, which sounds, I think, impressive. But it also appears that most of that was achieved by recategorizing some of the below-grade first floor or lower floor footage. Really, there's only been a reduction, I think, of 23 square feet from the project. And so I was disappointed in that. I was hoping to see a bigger redesign of the project. So that results, if, again, staff records are to be believed, that's the second largest overall square footage in the neighborhood and tied with two others for the largest FAR. So it is a bigger structure in that neighborhood. The setbacks, I believe, maybe that's an insolvable problem here. It's just, everybody's going to be tight in there, and I understand there are various neighbors who have setback concerns and problems. So I'm not overly concerned with the setbacks, except to the extent that perhaps the chimney impacts a fire concern. The windows and privacy issues, I think, have not been resolved. The height has been reduced by 6 inches, but again, I think as I understand it, they're already within height limitations, so they're not seeking any kind of variance for that. So I'm not overall worried about height. So for me, it is the FAR, which again, I was hoping for a bigger and more drastic change to better fit into that neighborhood. It seems to me that this is still a solvable problem. 420 square feet is what they're over, and it's solvable. I think it just hasn't been solved yet, and I'm not sure why. And so I'm a little frustrated on this, but that's my concern.
Commissioner Stump.
I want to say that I completely agree with Commissioner Raspy. My comments again would have been, I could realize we have to use the term FAR, but one of the things that was used last time was the mass and the scale of this property. Simply put, too much house, too small of a lot. And what's happening is, like you said, 23 square foot reduction really, in my mind, as well falls short. They're still going to end up with a substantial property, even if the excess FAR is not approved. And so I would not be one to support that finding that we should expand beyond. We should stay with the FAR and not go with an additional 420 square feet.
Mr. Barnett.
I'll go next. I want to start with positive things about the application. I think the architectural design is very favorable. The setbacks and height are compatible with the neighbors. The offer to remove the chimney is a positive. And although it's noted that the applicant have, without doubt, been good contributors and citizens in the town, it's not a basis for our decision tonight. We have to rely on the standards in the town ordinances. The offer of the frosted windows was made, and I think that that is something that could be looked into further. On On the negatives, though, I agree with my fellow commissioners that 440 square feet is large, and the FAR is not a goal to be achieved in the first place. It's a maximum. And the issue of verifying the data is, potentially something that we should look at. Yeah, I think in the sense of scale, as has been raised tonight, is a very important issue. So, I guess in summary, although I see these positives, I think that I am in total agreement with my fellow commissioners that the 424 is a real problem.
Commissioner Burnett.
Yes, thank you. I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think the project is beautiful. It's a difficult street. 81% are non-conforming, 69% are non-conforming setbacks. So, it's very difficult with these lots. I think the cry from the neighbors has always been about the massing and the size and the FAR, 420. So I think that really needs to be addressed some way. I would hope that you could maintain the quality of the home and the look of the home. It's a beautiful home, and somehow get it down a little lower. I love the chimney there. It's a decorative part of the building. I don't think that should have to go away. But I agree with my fellow commissioners, because this was what we addressed initially, and I don't see any change. So I'm sorry to say that, but I feel the same as my fellow commissioners on this.
So what I'm hearing from my fellow commissioners is that with regards to the setbacks, we agree that this is compatible with the neighborhood, but the square footage over the FAR is something that we're struggling to make the findings for. Okay. So I guess, is there a motion or suggestion?
I can venture a motion.
Sure. I guess that, let's try it.
With respect to our agenda item 2 tonight relating to 176 Loma Alta, I move to deny the request for approval to demolish an existing single-family home, construct a new single-family residence to exceed the floor area ratio standards with reduced side setbacks, and construction of accessory dwelling unit. I'm going to exclude the accessory dwelling unit because I think there's no question about that complying, and the remaining requirements of the application. So I open it to staff to see if we've got adequate coverage on that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can I get a second?
Can I just ask a question?
We actually need, because the motion's on the table, we need to get a second, and then we can discuss. Can you second? Okay, thank you, Commissioner Stump, and now discussion. Sure? Okay. Since we have a motion and a second, I'll call the question. Can all commissioners in favor please raise their hand? The motion passes unanimously. There's 5 of us. 5-0. And are there appeal rights?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are appeal rights. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision can appeal that decision to the town council. Forms are available online and in the clerk's office. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Okay, thank you. We will now be moving on to item number 3 on our agenda for tonight. And we So item number 3 is to consider an appeal of a community development director decision to deny a fence exception request for an existing fence partially located in the town's right-of-way and exceeding the height limitations within the required front yard and street side yard setbacks on property zoned R-1D located at 10 Charles Street, APN 532-36-022. Categorically exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. Fence height exception application FHE 23-001. Property owner and applicant and appellant is Firoz Pradhan. I'm so sorry for that. And the project planner is Mr. Mullen. Can I have a show of hands of commissioners that visited the site? And are there any disclosures? No, thank you. Okay, and I believe, Mr. Mullen, you're giving the staff report. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and good evening. For your consideration tonight is an appeal of a director's decision denying an exception to the fence height regulations for a fence at 10 Charles Street. The subject property is located on the corner of Charles Street and Los Gatos Boulevard and is developed with a single-family residence. On November 11th, 2022, an administrative warning was issued by the town for construction of a fence exceeding height limitations in the required side yard area. Staff discussed the fence with the property owner and informed them that the new fence exceeded the maximum allowable height of 3 feet when located in the required front, street side yard setbacks, as well as the traffic view area and the corner site triangle. On January 10th, 2023, the applicant applied for an exception to the town's fence regulations based on concerns related to safety and security. Planning and engineering staff initially supported the request, finding that the open design of the fence and the width of the sidewalk and planting strip mitigated the traffic and pedestrian safety concerns. However, following a site visit, staff noted that portions of the fence are located in the town's right-of-way, a fact not available during initial consideration of the exception request. In consultation with the engineering division, it was determined that the town could not make the findings required for granting the exception, and the request was denied on March 23rd, 2023. On April 3rd, 2023, the denial was appealed to the Planning Commission by the property owner. Pursuant to Town Code, the Planning Commission may hear the matter anew and render a new decision. In their letter of justification, the property owner reiterates their safety concerns and security concerns and discuss the unique characteristics of the property and goals of mitigating safety issues with the open view portion of the fence. The property owner also notes the location of the fence accommodates reasonable and fair access to approach the front yard. The property owner also noted that locating the fence within the property boundary would make exterior circulation between the side yard and front yard impractical and may require the removal of some oak trees. Finally, the property owner offers their willingness to sign any needed agreements with the town in order to maintain the fence in the town's right-of-way. Based on the analysis provided in the staff report, staff recommends denial of the appeal, upholding the decision of the director to deny the exception request. In addition to planning staff, engineering staff is also in attendance tonight to address any questions to the commission. This concludes my presentation, and staff's available to support your discussion this evening.
Thank you. Commissioner Stump?
A couple of questions. First, as I understand it, the portion of the fence that's in the town right-of-way is on Charles Street, not Los Gatos, not the Los Gatos Boulevard side. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's Charles Street that is in the town right-of-way. The other question I would have for Public Works would be, are there any plans for a sidewalk now or ever to be installed on Charles Street? What is the priority? Because obviously town right-of-way would be very important to us if sidewalks were to be installed. What's the story there?
Thank you, Commissioner Stump. So we have Mr. Watson, Senior Civil Engineer, on Zoom, as well as the town engineer, Gary Heap. So whoever wants to field that, go ahead and chime in.
I can jump in. James Watson, Senior Engineer in town of Los Gatos. Thanks for the question. Sidewalks are something that typically are put in by the direction of council, and so we would look to council to make some sort of capital improvement project in the area if there was such a demand or request. To my knowledge, there's currently no planned, and I've heard no discussions of any plans to install a sidewalk on Charles Street.
Thank you.
Commissioner Raspy?
Thank you. I just want to follow up on that question. To the extent that we permitted a fence to be placed subject to, as I understand it, a license agreement or encroachment document, whatever, is one of the conditions of that, to follow up on Commissioner Stump's question, if town ever wished to develop it, that the landowner would have to remove the fence? Is that one of the conditions of the agreement?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Commissioner Barnett?
Yeah, extending on that comment. So the staff report says that private improvements on the town's right-of-way can create safety and town liability issues and are not typically permitted, but they can be allowed with an encroachment permit and license agreement, typically required through Parks and Public Works Department. So my question is, has there been any discussion with the applicant related to getting such an encroachment permit?
Thank you for that question. I can start. The applicant has expressed their willingness to sign any agreement needed to maintain the fence in the town's right-of-way.
Okay. Is there any reason why that hasn't been done yet?
In general, and I can defer to Mr. Watson, in general, the town discourages development and public improvements in the public right-of-way, so that was the reason for denial. I don't know if Mr. Watson has anything to add to that.
I'll just echo that, but yeah, when we originally looked at it, we weren't considering any improvements in the public right-of-way. We have had some situations come up recently that have made us consider some public improvements or private improvements in the public right-of-way. One other thing to consider, information that did come up subsequent to our original denial, is our town engineer did a ride along with one of our police department officers and actually went to the site just today and took a look at it. And the police officer, Calipo, did not support the viewing that was available at that turn. Expressing concern about southbound traffic on Los Gatos Boulevard turning right onto Charles and potential pedestrian being unable to be seen. So I just wanted to kind of add that extra piece of information since it did kind of develop today.
Are there any other questions for staff? Yes, Commissioner Stump.
Maybe I'm directionally challenged, but that was a right turn onto Charles Street as you would be going north on Los Gatos Boulevard. Is that what was being stated by, concern by the police officer?
If I said that I misspoke, I intended to say southbound on Los Gatos Boulevard, right turn onto Charles.
So for clarification, I believe the right turn would be northbound.
The right turn going northbound. Okay. You wouldn't be making a right turn onto Charles Street if you're going southbound.
Yeah, that's contrary. So you come up to the traffic intersection at Los Gatos Saratoga, Los Gatos Boulevard, you take a right turn onto Charles, or I'm sorry, right turn onto Los Gatos Boulevard, and then it's a left turn onto Charles. And so if you're heading in the northbound direction, you would turn left onto Charles, but that's not the one that was brought up. It's the other direction coming towards Los Gatos Saratoga and turning onto Charles, which my recollection is that's a right turn.
Yeah.
And just verifying through the chair that would be the northbound direction of Los Gatos Boulevard, turning right onto Charles Street.
I apologize for that. I'm the directionally challenged one.
Okay, so I just would like to clarify with staff, though, that there was according to Parks and Public Works, is that who determined that the initial view corridor was clear and okay?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So obviously, as you can recognize with the dates, this has been kicking around for a little bit. Discussions back in 2023 with the town, with Mr. Watson and the traffic engineer, based on a site visit, they didn't have any sightline issue, and that's reflected in that email exchange between myself and Mr. Watson. There was some information provided verbally through the town engineer based on a ride-along with one of our police officers today, that the police officer in that conversation expressed some concern with the line of sight when turning right onto Charles from Los Gatos Boulevard. As you look down that fence, you're not looking perpendicular to the open view of it. You're looking at it at an angle, and that officer, to my understanding, expressed some concerns about the blocking of the view through the corner when approaching it from that direction.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions at this time? Okay, we will, thank you, Mr. Mullen and everyone. We will now open the public portion of the public hearing on item number 3 and give the applicant or appellant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes. So I believe I have a speaker card for Mr. Pradham.
Respected Chairwoman and members of the Planning Commission, I just want to start off by taking a moment to, from the bottom of my heart, thank the staff, particularly Sean Mullen, for the patience that he has exhibited over the last year and a half while I was going through an irreparable loss in my life. And I really want to thank you. There are some unique characteristics surrounding this particular home. It was built in 1920. We purchased the home 99 years later. It's obviously located, and I'm really happy that you all visited the home, or visited the site. It's on a very quiet, dead-end street, Charles, at the intersection of Charles and Los Gatos Boulevard. Just 6 neighbors on that street, very little traffic. The main living room, which is often visited by my son and the 2 grandkids of my mother-in-law, is the bedroom on the front of the house, and that room, through a pair of French doors, opens to the boulevard. And so obviously, okay, the other thing, of course, is that there is a stop sign on Charles, which you all are aware of. During COVID, and while construction was going on, there was a 6 feet solid fence, you know, the green canvas fence. We had never got a phone call even from anybody saying that there's a concern about visibility. When we were designing the home, and the fence specifically, but even the home, just to let you know that we had overall a fantastic experience with the town, whether it was with Joel Paulson from planning, or from the HPC, or Roy Alba, or Robert Gray, or or Sean Mullen, of course, any of the people. It was just a fantastic experience. And people would say, oh my God, we feel sorry that you're building something in the town. And I'm just being honest with you. For us, the experience was absolutely fantastic. We were also blessed. We had spoken to 2 top architects, Gary Colsat and Chris Spalding, and then we worked with Chris Spalding. The objectives for building the fence for us were safety and security, particularly because the kids were going to be playing in the front yard, and that was the main play area. Visibility was a main issue, and we had spoken with the neighbors, and most of the neighbors, I mean, there was one neighbor, obviously, who has some concern, and we're still trying to work out some tweaking of the fence that would address that need, and hopefully the need of the concern of the police officer. In fact, when James Watson mentioned about the police officer, I've actually spoken to 3 or 4 different police officers when there would be some incident and they would park on Charles because it's easy parking. and I would literally call them out and I would say, can you just spend a couple of minutes and tell me if you have any concerns with visibility? And each one of them said absolutely no. The way the fence has been designed and built, we don't have any concern. But visibility for us was important. In addition to safety and security, we spoke with the neighbors. We made it a point to have very expensive and custom-built fence, 26-inch tall, 38-inch of lattice work, and we literally mimicked the fence of the house across the street. And then, of course, I reached out to Nicole Burnham when Sean expressed a concern. She deputed James Watson. He came, he spent some time, and that's the email that he sent. If you can quickly pull up the PDF. Right, the other one, sorry, the one on the visibility. No, the other PDF. No, the video or the other PDF, there are two PDFs. Okay, the video also is fine. Any timeout for this or no? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I had no idea. I was in. So the white car is mine, and I'm literally at the stop sign. And this is today. It was obviously a rainy, cloudy day, but you can see that even through the lattice, you could see the cars. If you can play it again. Yeah, if you can just replay the. Yeah, thanks. As soon as the car enters, and much before. Now, if you can if you can turn on if you can show us the PDF, the other PDF, not the one that you showed, but the other one. I know there's a concern about the right of way. What we did is very naively, we built the fence along the curb and gutter. And you can see there are some trees. And if we were to build the fence along the property line, which we were not even aware of, all I did is I called Chris Spalding, I sent him the design, and I said, you have a view on this? And he said, it's beautiful, but it must be very expensive. And I said, yes, but it's in keeping with all the details that we have put in the home. You don't find the other PDF? You're not able to find it? Okay, I sent you two PDFs. Okay, it's fine. They were basically snapshots of the video that I had sent, where you can literally see that you can see the cars coming through the lattice. And if you need to tweak the last 2 or 3 sections, it's something that we're definitely willing to do. And as far as the right of way is concerned, Sean and I have spoken about this. If there's anything we need to do to protect the town, we'll do it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, before you sit down, are there any questions for the applicant or the appellant at this time? No. Okay, thank you. You will have an additional 3 minutes to speak after we get public comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I do have a couple of speaker cards here. The first is for Michelle. Thank you. I thought you abandoned us. I'm just kidding. Please just state your name for the record and you will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Michelle Huntley. I am the property owner at 264 Los Gatos Boulevard, which shares a property line with 10 Charles. And forgive me, I don't know town laws and regulations, but I just wanted to speak to you today. When Furrows bought after he finished his remodel, he did approach me about a fence going on Los Gatos Boulevard. At which point, I did express my concerns because it's a very busy road. We've got kids on bikes, scooters, short kids, tall kids, high schoolers, middle schoolers, cars, and it's and so he did make many changes to the fence. He did provide some spacing so I could see and have some visibility, because if it's a solid fence, my driveway is a complete safety hazard and unusable. It has affected my visibility. It has reduced for sure. What caught me off guard was that not only does it affect my visibility, but the pedestrian walking by cannot see me. I'm very careful and I drive out slow, and as it is now, I'm okay, so long as the bushes are kept off the fence. But I've witnessed the surprise on many people's faces when they see my car. They have no idea it's there, which is an extra layer. So my concern going forward would be allowing an unrestricted fence going in, requiring a permit, saying that it's allowed to have the fence higher, and with unrestricted materials, because someone in the future, he could change his mind later, put a solid fence in, and visibility, the driveway would be unusable. Visibility at Charles Street would be even more impacted. I have seen people really have to slow down, and that's an unreasonable expectation for kids to take that extra time to go super slow if something more solid were to go in down the line. It's unexpected for adults to slow down running late from work. People tend to speed through these intersections, and we need some visibility. So, as it is now, I hope that we can find a way to work together to maintain this visibility that works within the town laws and to preserve the safety going forward for any future owners.
Thank you. I think Commissioner Stump has a question.
A question. In fact, I looked at your property today just because of that concern of a fence coming right up to your property. I noticed that it is angled a bit.
Yes, I asked him for an angle, and he did.
My question is that angle sufficient from your perspective, or could it be even greater? Could you have additional visibility? And I know that the fence comes around between your properties and I think stops at a hedge line.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
The headline going back, they wanted a fence and a hedge line, and I just couldn't fit it in my driveway. We had asked for the angle, and they did agree, and I had thought at the time that it was going to be a little bit more we had agreed upon. So, any angle additional helps greatly.
Okay.
Everything helps on that street.
Okay, I just wanted to, I do just want to clarify one thing with you. Right now, you feel like the visibility is good. Your main concern is that moving forward, if the fence were altered to not have the lattice, that would be...
If there's any altering, that would be completely unusable. As of right now, I'm managing, he's been agreeing to keep the hedge off the fence because there's now a hedge, on the other side of it, which further obstructs the view. But if he agrees to keep it maintained as it is now, I feel comfortable working with him. A future owner might be another story.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker card I have is for Doug. Great, thank you.
Yes, my name is Doug Alcott. I live at 300 Charles Street, the very end of that street. And I'm speaking in defense of the appeal of the denial of the exception. I've lived on that street for a long time with my wife, and our children have been raised mainly there, going to local schools. And I had sent you a PowerPoint with many more slides than Mr. Mullen showed up there, showing the access to Los Gatos Boulevard, first from Charles, and then views looking either way, left or right from the street, and also including, and showing that there was no blocking of the view by his fence. Also, at the very end of Charles Street, before you get to the boulevard, there is the word stop written in the pavement before the sidewalk. So if you're leaving, you have to stop there. And you look either direction, there's no obstruction. Also, the town has, at my request and some other people's request, has put a sign on the boulevard before you approach Charles Street saying, do not block intersection. And the intersection is with Charles Street, okay, not at the traffic light, which connects the road to Saratoga. And also, they marked on the pavement in front of Charles intersection with Boulevard, do not keep clear, okay? keep clear. So if people are driving in that direction and paying attention, they would not block the exit or ingress in, and they would leave space for people to get in and out. And also, it would protect children, lots of children going to school there down that street, and bicyclists. Okay, so I feel that the current location of the fence and the provisions that the town has made for safety there are adequate. And I have not seen any accidents there in all the time we've lived there, and from the time he built that fence, was caused by that, by a lack of the view. So that's all I really want to say. Now, if you want, I'd like to meet with Mr. Mullen at the site again, or someone, to go over these details. If you could see them in my photos, I think you would agree with what I'm saying. And unfortunately, I wasn't aware that the deadline was 11 a.m. today. I sent it
Thank
slightly
you.
ahead. Okay.
I know.
So that's
It's-
all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yes, and thank you for the reminder that the deadline is at 11 a.m. for the public. But we did all do a site visit at least. So are there any? Yes. Are there any questions for the speaker? Okay. The next speaker card I have is for Natasha.
She's my daughter, and I think she had confidence on her dad, so she left.
Okay. I understand. And Saeed also? Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Saeed Nejad. I live on Charles Street, a couple of houses down from Mr. Brano's house. Just like Mr. Dog was saying, I don't see any issue with visibility driving up from the bus from Charles to Los Gatos Boulevard. There is a stop sign right there. You stop and then you just look and you can see if anybody is passing, jogging or dog walkers, people, pedestrians, and so on. The only issue I see on this is in the afternoon when the high school students are going back home and driving off of Los Gatos Boulevard. That section is they speed up, and there's a little bit of a danger of accident there, but it's not the reason for the fence. It's not we're not talking about the fence here, but that intersection is quite dangerous. And I've seen an accident before on that, and this really had nothing to do with the property number 10. Yeah, the house is, when he built the house, it just really made the neighborhood so much nicer. It was a beautiful home, and the fence is a very high quality fence, beautiful, with a lattice section that you can see through it. And I hate to see that be changed to something else. Definitely not a solid wall, solid fence. And so I'm not very familiar with the coordinates with the ordinance of the town, and but the way it is, I have no issues with it. Not me and not anyone in my family. So yeah, thanks.
Are there any questions for the speaker? No, thank you. The last speaker card I have is for Kevin.
Yeah, hi, I'm Kevin Chesney. I live on 2 Charles Street. I've been there since 1994.
Sorry, you can raise the mic just so it's because the meeting's being recorded.
My name is Kevin Chesney. I have owned the house on 2 Charles Street since 1994. And when Feroz, first of all, I lost both parents in 2024, my mother and father. and Feroz and I have talked about our losses together. He lost his lovely wife. He's a wonderful neighbor. It's not an issue. He's a kind neighbor. And I hate to come up here and talk about how dangerous that fence is. To be quite honest, the neighbor on 5 Charles Street, Matthew Daly, had an accident for the fence that was that green fence that he's talking about that was for construction. Kent Anderson, the other neighbor, and I both immediately after he brought that fence up said it's dangerous. Both of us said, please make changes to it. Please change it. And we've talked about it for over a year. We didn't go to the county or to the town, but we asked him to make changes because as you're making a left, as you're coming out from Charles Street and you're turning right, you can't see to the left. And when his hedges come up, basically, if the town leaves it there, I'm going to sue you. It is dangerous. Basically, you're doing something that is putting me at risk. As a homeowner, as someone who has lived there since 1994, it is a dangerous fence. Now, that being said, I've sat down with him. He's very kind. And we've talked about changes that could be made that would address that. And if he can make those changes, I'm totally fine. He needs to move it back, maybe 2-4 feet, or he needs to drop some of those things down. But if he doesn't make those changes, then you guys are going to be liable. If you make that decision, I will hold you liable. It is a dangerous fence. And there are 3 neighbors, Matthew Daly, Kent Anderson, and myself, that see it extremely dangerous. I'm sorry. I love my neighbor. He's very kind. He's a very good man. It's a beautiful home. But to be quite honest, it's dangerous. And we've already had 1 accident because of that prior fence. So, be quite honest. It's very dangerous.
Are there any questions, Commissioner Stone?
I just wanted to get a clarification. You said because of that prior fence, are you talking about the construction fence that was up?
The construction fence, Matthew Daly had an accident with the construction fence. Prior to that, there was no fence. I've lived there. I knew Don prior to that.
What changes are you recommending to that corner?
I spoke with him earlier. We've talked about a couple of changes. Either move the fence back, which other neighbors, if you look, it's all about visibility. He's done a beautiful job of building a beautiful home. The fence itself is a beautiful fence. I don't want to discount that. He's been kind, and we've talked about things. It's not a matter of me wanting to come up here and diss him. It's a matter of safety. That's all it is. And he and I talked about it earlier today. Either he needs to bring a portion of that fence down, but if I'm coming up and I have to go into the sidewalk to see whether or not someone's coming over or if I need to turn right, it's dangerous for me. We've already had an accident. All I want to do is make it safe. That's all. And to be quite honest, he's a good neighbor. And I feel bad having to come up and say this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Thank you. Okay, so I have no speaker cards for item number 3. Are there any hands raised on Zoom?
You chair, let me switch screens. No, there are no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. So, I invite the appellant back up to, you will have an additional 3 minutes to.
Yeah, I really don't know if I have much to add, but I will say that when I spoke to those 2 or 3 different police officers, in one of the cases, he had already addressed the incident, and he actually turned around, stopped at the stop sign, looked left, looked right, and he said, he said, why are you asking me this? I don't see a problem. Okay. And And I do understand that Kevin has a problem, and we've spoken about lowering those 2 or 3 sections at the corner. Obviously, our concern is the safety issue, because when the grandkids are playing there, it's a 26-inch fence and somebody can walk across. I've also mentioned to Sean that we had 2 incidents where somebody literally knocked at the door of the French patio, French doors in the front bedroom. So safety and security is a concern. I totally understand that visibility is a concern. I was driving back today from Whole Foods to Charles to see if there are other such cases, and I came across 9 homes on the corner of Los Gatos and side streets that had fences that were far above 3 feet and solid. On Charles itself, all 3 other corners have the same issue. Okay, but they are working with it, and I'm willing to work with people and get this issue resolved. I really don't have anything to say. We've had such wonderful memories. The home was originally and this is not relevant to to this, but I'll just share these things. The home originally was 268 Los Gatos Boulevard, and I got a call from Robert Gray because we had applied for a change of address, and he said, "I just want to give you the good news. Your home is not going to be on Charles, but we have a problem. We need an even number from 2 to 20." And at the spur of the moment, I said, "We are not rich enough to live on 10 Downing, but we could live on 10 Charles." And that's how the address came. When the demolition was going on, we found a piece of paper, handwritten, nailed to one of the studs, saying the millworks on this building has been found to be satisfactory. And it was signed Feb 18, 1920. And we found it in February 2020, 100 years later. It's really, really important for me, and I know this is very personal and this may not be. My wife lived joyfully till the very last moment. There's a beautiful African proverb, when death comes, and it will, make sure it finds you alive. And she lived that till the very last moment. I want to honor her legacy and still make sure that people are safe. Finally, I want to say that let justice and law be tempered with pragmatism. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sorry if I got emotional.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that and all the details. Are there any questions? Mr. Stump does have a question for you, or Commissioner Stump.
I hope you don't stop me with your question.
Thanks for the information you provided.
Thank you.
Would you consider making some changes at the corner of Charles and Los Gatos Boulevard, whether it's more of an angle, similar to what you did on the other side for your neighbor, so that there would be more visibility, especially looking down Los Gatos Boulevard?
Right. So one of the things that's easy to do, because obviously these are very solid posts and so on, is there are 3 sections, and I can, if you pull up the picture, I can show you. There are 3 sections, 1 on Charles and 2 on Los Gatos Boulevard. If the lattice work can be lowered to 3 feet or probably to 39 inches, as long as the visibility is there, then you're not looking through the, through the lattice.
Other question to your neighbor at 264 Los Gatos Boulevard. Would you also be willing to work with her to review kind of the angle that was put in there? Because even my observation was it was a bit shallow and not a lot, and it could be something that goes back a little bit farther.
Yeah, I can work with Michelle. Sure, yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Though I do feel that her concern was, and we met this morning, of course, is that if you sell the home, somebody will come and put a solid fence. So if there is an exception, it should not be a blanket exception.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So we'll now close the public portion of the public hearing on item number 3, and I invite commissioners to ask questions of staff, provide comments, and eventually propose a motion. I would the public portion of the meeting is closed. So, and you stated your 3 minutes, but thank you. I have a question about the findings just before we get started with some other questions. And on page 129, like Exhibit 2, it says the required findings for granting a fence height exception pursuant blah, 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 are a special security concern exists. And then there's a second bullet point. I just want to clarify that we only need to make one of those two findings.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then originally the applicant came forward with the special security concern, but this is also listed an option. And when I was looking through, I also was thinking that perhaps a special circumstance exists because of the lot configuration with regards to the house and everything. So is that why that's listed there also for us?
Thank you for that question. The reason those are listed is those are the two that really apply to the property because it's not an interior lot. So there's a number of findings, A through E. D and E, which are provided here, are the ones that are applicable to the lot.
Right, because the other one's also like commercial property, all of that. Okay, correct. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that. Does anyone else have questions for staff? Okay, so my I just want to clarify with staff and with the town attorney that if this appeal, I mean, what happens if we grant this appeal and with regards to like the legal responsibility of the town if this fence is in the public right away?
The town would be susceptible to claims if there were an injury. There's an immunity that's called the design immunity. When the town has participated in the design of an improvement, that immunity would not be available because the town and the legislative body has to approve the design for the design immunity to apply. So the design immunity would not be available under these circumstances.
Okay, and as part of the documents that the appellant is, or the, you know, that they're agreeing to sign off on, what sort of responsibility do they take?
It does require the property owner to indemnify the town for any claims that arise out of the improvement that's located in the public right-of-way. And then there's also an insurance requirement.
Okay, and it also gives the town the ability to remove the fence, like in case of an emergency, or ask that the property owner or require that the property owner remove the fence if there's a need for the use of that right of way?
The town's agreements in the past have required the property owner to remove the improvement at the request of the town. We don't have any language in the agreement right now that talks about the town having the ability to remove it in the event of an emergency, but I think there's case law that would support the town's ability to do that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Burnett.
Yes, I have a question. If the present owner sold his home, would the same rules apply? I mean, he would have signed an indemnity protecting the town. Would the new homeowner?
That's a good point. The conditions of approval do run with the land. However, the license agreement would not run with the land. And so we would need to provide that the license agreement terminates when the property changes hands.
Thank you.
Commissioner Stump.
The safety issue that was brought up by one of the residents on Charles Street, is there some guidance the town would give there related to the construction? I know some suggestions have been offered, but if we were to grant the appeal, could that be a condition of the appeal, or of granting the appeal, or granting permission to be in the town right away, et cetera?
Thank you for that. I think the town or the planning commission has the ability to grant the appeal with conditions to modify the fence as you see fit. My initial response to is, does the town have basically a framework to avoid the situation? I would say the town code is what helps avoid it, and that's why we're here this evening. You have the latitude to look at things a little bit more in a different light and consider the appeal and the extenuating circumstances. And through the chair, if I may offer,
Yes.
Through the town engineer, the license agreement would actually, he's indicating the license agreement would be recorded on the property. So it would run with the property, just to add that information. I'm not sure he's available to unmute at the moment.
But any new buyer, I mean, then we'd need to structure it as a deed restriction so that it applied to any new buyer. Because historically, the town's license agreements have been between the town and a specific party.
Can we start with comments, Chair?
Go for it.
I don't see, from my perspective, any way that we can grant the appeal. The recommendation by staff is no. I think there's credibility from the Public Works representative about the policeman speaking today, even though it's hearsay. So is the applicant's statement about the other policeman. I think the concern about loss of indemnity is a very serious issue. The liability of the town is a very great issue also. And there may be opportunities for the applicant to come, the appellant to come back with another application that would be consistent with the ordinances of the town. But I personally would find it extremely difficult to grant the appeal.
Commissioner Burnett.
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Barnett. Hearing from a couple of the residents, the issues they brought up, which were very concerning, I would not be able to make the required findings to grant the appeal. And I stand by our compliance officer and the violation of the code and the zoning 29.40.0315. I mean, these corners are very important, and we have a lot of them come before us. So we sort of, we're very sensitive about any kind of change on corner fences. And this seems to pose particular problems. This is a busy road. And aside, the police officer who mentioned, although we say it was hearsay, he did comment that it was dangerous and the fence was not, you know, there's so much lattice there that I think it actually tends to help block the view. But I would not be able to grant an appeal in this item.
I have an additional question for town staff, and that is if the current owner or future owner wanted to alter the fence, it would, they couldn't make it a solid fence because that wouldn't be an in-kind replacement.
That's correct.
Okay.
If the appeal were granted for the fence as it currently is,
okay,
the fence would have to remain as is.
Okay. Thank you. Just to clarify that, because that was a question that one of the or a concern of one of the neighbors. I think that we. Oh yeah.
To add on to that, I do. If the commission were inclined to grant the appeal, I would recommend making that a condition of approval about keeping it in kind.
Okay, even though it's in the town code, just additionally having that just as a backup.
I think so, because otherwise the conditions will be recorded as they are and it won't be documented.
Okay, perfect. So I think that I mean, I have a little bit, I hear everyone's concerns. As a person that has, my mom lives relatively close to this property, so I do walk, and I mean, obviously I'm not walking up that end of Charles because it's a dead end, but I do cross Charles there a lot and walk along Los Gatos Boulevard. And I know that safety is a primary concern. However, when, the initial staff report came in that we have, they didn't have a concern with the corner site triangle, which like typically is the standard that we look at with regards to safety. However, I hear some of the neighbors' concerns. I'm wondering if we can come to some sort of middle ground of adjusting the fence, because I do think that on certain parts of this property, it does make sense, and I could make some of these I could make the findings that this is not an unreasonable request. And so I really do think that if the safety is the concern, I'm wondering if the commission has any ideas about how to possibly just make an adjustment.
Yeah. Chair, I'm torn on this one. I really came in this evening after reviewing the materials, and I understood the applicant's concern or the appellant's concerns. Wants to utilize their front yard, has small children, and as a result, there's traffic right there, and you want to protect your children from both intruders and then getting outside the property and into traffic. At the same time, we have to protect our pedestrians and drivers from visibility issues. And so this is one where I think I agree with you, Chair. There is a win here, I think, for both the town and for the applicant, but I don't think it's the current configuration. I think the current configuration obstructs too much of view of children and high schoolers walking up and down the street and people trying to make a left turn, for instance, out of Charles onto Los Gatos. I don't know that lowering the fence height helps the applicant, because children can go over in either direction, out into traffic or into his yard. I'm wondering if perhaps taking the right angle out of where it connects Charles and Los Gatos Boulevard, if you turn that instead into a 45-degree angle, and I think that creates a sight line. Is that a better idea? Maybe. If the applicant would have to give up some land to make that happen, some part of the usable space. I think, again, there's a solution here, but in its current configuration, I can't support the fence. I think it creates issues for pedestrians, for drivers, and ultimately for town.
Could I request that we that the photo that is in the staff report on page, it's part of Exhibit 10, that like that corner that really kind of shows us that site, that we look at it together as a group. Not that one, the other side.
Page 137.
Yeah. Or do we all have it up? I mean, I think or you and Susan can share. Okay. But perhaps for staff's recommendation of if we're going to make a recommendation to clarify.
What was that page number again on the staff report?
137.
It'll take me one moment, but I can
Or
pull it up.
151. It's the same photo. 151 and 137, yeah. So I think that as you're pulling that up, Mr. Mullen, I just want to say that part of the visibility issue that I saw when I visited is that there's like a lot of trees happening anyway. So, those trees are there and they exist, but that does definitely add to the situation. But I think that if sort of where that first tree in on Charles is if that's where the fence kind of starts its left-hand turn, that will like kind of mitigate a lot of these issues. So I am wondering if everyone's amenable to us just opening up public comment again, just to get a clarification if the appellant would be willing to adjust that change.
You could open it up just for the purpose of asking that
Just
question.
that one question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's hold. I want to see what other commissioners think. So, yes, like basically that tree, there's multiple trees there. So really, I agree with Commissioner Raspy that if that, you know.
So just to clarify, if you see it looks like there's a span probably of 10 feet from the corner to the first vertical post, right where that cursor is. If you take out that section and instead go on a 45-degree angle, I think that perhaps opens up a view corridor. I don't know if it's adequate or not, and I just throw it out there as a possible solution.
Yes, Commissioner Barnett.
I have a question for staff, and that is, given the procedural status that we have an appeal based on the existing fence, do we as the commission have authority to approve a variation?
You could approve the appeal or grant the appeal with conditions, and the conditions could be the revisions that the commission lands on.
Okay, thank you.
And the alternative would be reject, and then there would have to be a whole new application to come in to be processed.
You could, I'll see what Joel has to say after me, but I would say that you could deny the appeal and then say that the applicant's free to come back with a new proposal.
Okay.
And in addition, whether it's approved, the appeal is granted or denied, that's an appealable action.
Okay, because it's a decision. Great. Okay, so all of the options. Okay, I feel like that would satisfy the needs of all the parties involved. I'm curious what other commissioners are thinking, or you want me to ask the appellant if they're willing to make that change?
I was going to say, can you expand on that? You said that. So which solution were you proposing?
Oh, attempt to grant the appeal with the condition that this part of the fence the lattice be removed and the fence be, made at the 45-degree angle.
I agree. We should give it a try. We should pursue it tonight.
Okay. So yes, Commissioner Barnett.
I just want to say, following up on staff's option, my own personal opinion is that we shouldn't be engineering and designing this tonight, that we should deny it without prejudice and encourage the appellant to come in with a different plan. I personally don't feel confident about doing that ourselves without staff reviewing the new design, including Public Works.
Commissioner Burnett.
Yes, I agree with Commissioner Barnett exactly on this. I feel we should deny it and have them come back with a new design. And I'm also concerned about leaving up shrubbery and tree care up to them. I mean, to make sure that there is, the visibility is cleared out all the time. I mean, that's another problem for me. So with this issue, there's a lot of problems with this fence the way it is. You have shrubbery, you have road, you have indemnity issues, you have the fence, which is very busy and causes, I think, an obstructive view. So I would feel much more comfortable denying it and having them come back with clear direction from staff on how these issues could be resolved. But I'm still concerned about our other town issue, the right-of-way, so I'm not comfortable with that yet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I do want to say that according to the staff report that we got tonight, I did not see that there was a safety issue according to that. So I'm not sure that, for me personally, how that really has, I don't know how staff would reevaluate it in a way that it couldn't make anything worse. It is only going to improve. But I do have a question for staff about the shrubbery and if there's anything in town code about requiring visibility with shrubs with regards to landscaping.
Thank you for that question. The same rules that apply to this fence also apply to trees and shrubs. So they're limited to 3 feet in height and subject to code enforcement should they grow taller than what is allowed when they're in the required front yard area, corner site, triangle, traffic view area, or the required street side setback.
So if the owner or whoever lives there in the future let the shrubs get out of control, that could be a code compliance complaint and a code violation.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I have a question for staff? Is there any way, I'm trying to find, again, a path forward, that if the applicant were to incorporate our changes, for instance, if we were to deny the appeal, but the applicant would incorporate our changes with a new design, would it necessarily come back to us? Or if community development director found, I understand it's the private right-of-way issue that actually initially landed it before us. But if, for instance, we indicated that that wasn't our main concern, rather it's the safety issue that's the main concern, and if town staff was placated with that issue, would it have to come back to us? If the redesign was incorporated, giving our input tonight, and 10 staff was satisfied?
And if I could ask a clarifying question, if you're talking about design alterations, is that something that would be accomplished through a condition on granting the appeal, or would that be, I mean, there's options of continuing it and coming back with an alternate design, or denying it with direction and without prejudice, about being explicit about why you can't grant the appeal.
Right. I see your point,
then the homeowner could file for a new fence height exception and staff could reevaluate it under that. Not sure if it would end up back here or not. It's hard to tell unless you continued it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the quickest point to A to B. I think we're largely in accord here. I think we all want to solve the problem. We see what the issues are. And even though I suggested a solution, I do agree with Commissioner Burnett. I don't want to be in a position that we are engineering results. That's not our role. But I want to get to the end result as quickly as possible. So if that is denial with recommendations and let them start the process again, maybe that's it. But I'm open to suggestions on that. But I do agree, we shouldn't be deciding the fence.
Commissioner Burnett?
Yeah, just a quick comment would be that as part of a revised plan, they could move the fence out of the right-of-way and take away that issue. And then I think if it passes muster with staff, that everyone would be okay with that.
Okay. Well, I personally, I understand the safety concerns, but once again, like, I do really strongly feel that Parks and Public Works said that this was not a major safety concern. And we have been, it's really more in front of us. I think we do need to make the finding for a fence height exception. And I understand that. I think the public right-of-way issue is what is in front of us. So maybe we do need to get a better idea of how we feel about that. I know that Commissioner Burnett said she's not entirely comfortable with that situation. But I felt like the willingness of the applicant to sign the license agreement and all the required documents were satisfactory to me. I know that there are other examples of private improvements in the public right-of-way in town. It just is a part of, being an old town with small streets and funky lots and all of the things. But I don't really feel comfortable like relying on hearsay from one police officer today when saying that should trump the traffic engineers' opinions on safety. So that's just kind of where I'm at. Commissioner Stump, and then.
So then I think it comes to either denial, that we deny the appeal, or we continue this with the idea that we would bring this back. And because we have two things to consider, we've got the right of way, and now we're identifying a public safety. Could have all been avoided if the fence were 3 feet high all the way around and not in the town right away. But that's not the circumstance we find ourselves in. So I think the other thing we need to keep in mind too, the staff was ready to grant this exception as we see it until it was discovered that a portion of this fence was in the right of way. And keep in mind that the Los Gatos Boulevard side of the fence is not in the town right of way. It's only on the Charles Street side. So I think that's what we're faced with. It's either we've got to deny this appeal and encourage the homeowner to come back through the process, or continue with this. And I guess I'd look to staff to say, is there a preference, and is one of those ways more convenient for the appellant?
There's certainly not a preference from staff's perspective. I think there's merits to both direction. Continuing with very specific direction could allow, and actually applying for a new fence height exception if it were denied, would allow the applicant an opportunity to continue to work with staff. And based on what we've heard tonight and the interaction with the police department, that could be something that we could chase down as well. We'd be looking for, if it was a continuous, very specific direction about the items that would need to be addressed, and then we could continue working with the applicant and then bring that back.
And then through the chair, I see that the town engineer has his hand raised on Zoom. So, Mr. Heap, if you have some input, please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to speak on this item here. I appreciate the late notice of this new information this evening with regards to the input from the police department today. I was fortunate enough to do a drive along with Sergeant Calipo this afternoon, and I did bring this item up specifically with regards to the visibility issue. The visibility issue is not from exiting Charles, but it is from traveling northbound on Los Gatos Boulevard and making that right turn onto Charles, which is not stop controlled. So folks can make that right turn. And if there are pedestrians that happen to be walking along Charles in the street because there is no sidewalk, it's difficult for them to move out of that way with that fence being there. I would be okay, so long as it was all right with the planning department and the town attorney, to go ahead and allow for this to move forward as a recommendation with removal of the fence, or at least lowering the fence within the 30-foot triangle at the corner, which is our standard site distance requirement for a corner. And then with regards to the fencing along Charles in the right-of-way, we could then live with that in the right-of-way with a license agreement that is recorded against the property, which again is deed restricted. And so if in the future we did need that right-of-way, we could request that property owner remove that.
Yeah, I think that I would request that we open the public comment just to answer the question of what the appellant, which route would you want us to issue a continuance with specific guidance, or would you rather have us deny and essentially you would need to start over? No, sorry. Just you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
No, that's fine. No. The neighbors and I have been discussing this issue.
So I'm sorry. Sorry. It's just because it's just a question of,
what's the question?
You be, so yes, thank you. So would you, if we issued a continuance on this item with specific direction, would you be willing to work with staff to improve the, view corridor as a town engineer mentioned?
100% yes.
Okay. And would you prefer to go that route versus a straight up denial of the request, which means that your options would be that you could appeal to town council or start over with a new application?
I would 100% like to resolve this issue with the staff.
Okay.
And obviously we'll involve the neighbors as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Rather than going to town council or coming back to this place.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Burnett.
Would there be a new filing fee if there was a new application?
Yes.
Yeah.
On that basis, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this hearing to a date acceptable to staff with direction that the appellant confer with staff with respect to addressing both the right-of-way issue and the safety issue, and that we have the opportunity then to bring it back in the event that staff is not prepared to make a decision on its own.
Is that a specific enough motion, or?
I can start and then the director can jump in. I think with that motion, that's what staff's been working on for some time. I think as a recommendation, perhaps we might want to be more specific about the safety concerns and the potential resolutions without, of course, engineering from the dais. We've heard concerns about the corner site triangle, and we've heard some opinions and feedback from the town engineer on that. And we've also heard concerns about the neighbor's driveway at, I think it was 264 Los Gatos Boulevard. And if there's any specific, offering specificity about bringing the height down, I think that's the kind of direction that would be extremely useful for staff, since we've already been trying to get there with this offline.
I think Commissioner Raspy
Chair,
has.
if I might offer for discussion among commissioners, my specific recommendations would be for the redesign, redesigning the corner at the intersection of Los Gatos Saratoga and Charles Street such that a possible resolution would be a 45-degree angle instead of a 90-degree angle at that site. That as part of the conditions of approval, there would be no changes in material to the fence, that plantings would not be allowed to grow along the fence line. There'd be a redesign of the fence at the driveway section of 264 Charles. That is, those would be my specific recommendations we would include as part of our continuance of the appeal.
And that's okay with I realized we didn't get a second for the motion. So
we don't have a motion.
We don't have a motion. Is that a motion though?
I would append that to Commissioner Barnett's motion. He already, I think, made a motion to continue. Those would be my conditions for the continuance.
Okay, and
if staff believes those are specific enough.
Yeah, the maker would accept those.
Okay, and do we have who seconded that motion initially? Okay, Commissioner Stump, thank you. So now discussion. Do we feel like that's sufficient direction? Yeah, Commissioner Burnett, and then.
Yeah, could I just have the motion clarified? We're talking about having it at the corner.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about having a 45-degree?
Yes, that would be a recommendation.
And you're keeping the same fencing material lattice?
So it couldn't be solid, and then they couldn't allow plantings to grow up to shield the view corridor either this owner or any subsequent owners.
And then how many feet would that be on Los Gatos Boulevard, and then how many feet?
I think I would leave the specific.
How do you figure out the dimensions on that?
To open the view triangle?
Yeah.
I think there's, I would go from post to post. There's already existing posts, look like about 10 feet from the corner.
I see.
And just utilize the existing structure so you wouldn't have to recreate the entire.
And does staff feel that that would be adequate?
Is that adequate? And I mean, is that more specific?
Thank you for that. I think that's certainly more specific. What I'm hearing is to look at the corner site triangle with the suggestion of changing that angle between Los Gatos Boulevard and Charles to a 45-degree angle or somewhere thereabouts, especially on the first panel on each side. Condition of approval so that there's no changes to the fence moving forward, so it carries with the project, not just in the town code, and that no plantings be allowed along the fence, and to work to redesign the fence to improve the safety at 264 Los Gatos Boulevard.
Yes, to make sure that, yes. And then I would just like to offer a recommendation to amend that we understand there are existing trees. So all of that, you know, taking that into consideration too, that we understand it might be like a foot or inches or something else might need to happen to engineer around those trees on the corner. Is that okay with the makers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then I believe the town engineer, he raised his hand for a second, but then took it down.
I did, if I could provide additional input, our town standard at corners is 30-foot setback from the intersection, 30 foot back from the property line along both of the legs of that triangle at the corner. And then it would be 10 foot back at the adjacent driveway. So that would be our town standard for visibility.
Yeah, I would amend my motion to adopt that standard as one to be considered before this is brought back to us, or certainly to the staff's approval.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Call, or no? We used to re-second. Okay, are we ready to call the question? I'm sorry, we can't open the public portion again, but are we continuing to a date? I know, sorry, this is not to a date certain, correct? Date determined by staff.
We can do it to a date certain, and let's do April 23rd, and we'll
Great.
work through internal stuff.
Okay.
And if we're not ready, then we'll just continue it again.
Okay, to April 23rd. Great. Okay, let's go ahead and call the question. All those in favor? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. And I think that we need a break, perhaps, so we'll do 10 minutes. 5.
I didn't think that
What?
would be a hard one.
I needed to
Half an hour. No. We'll be back in 10 minutes.
Okay, then I started looking
I know,
at
so did
it.
I. I was
You know,
we will now be moving onto item number 4, which is to consider a request for approval to demolish an existing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence, remove large protected trees, and site work requiring a grading permit on property zoned HR 2.5 located at 119 Harwood Court, APN 527-56-027, architecture and site application S-24-040, categorically exempt pursuant to CEQA guidelines, section 15303A, new construction or conversion of small structures. Property owners are Donald and Marie Conroy. Applicant is Gary Kolstadt, and the project planner is Sray Nathan. And before we get the staff report, I just want to confirm that everyone did a site visit. Yes? Okay. And then are there any disclosures? No. And I just want to say before we start this whole process, I thank you for your patience tonight. And I know this was a very long meeting, so thank you, and we appreciate you still being here.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Before you is an architectural site application. The subject site is zoned HR 2.5 and is located at 119 Harwood Court. On May 16, 2024, an urban lot split under SB 9 was approved, splitting an approximately 65,000 square foot lot into 2 parcels. The subject property is a 29,556 square foot lot developed with an existing 1,200 square foot dwelling. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing structure and construct a new 3,245 square foot 2-story residence with a 1,094 square foot attached garage, of which 972 square feet is located below grade. The town's consulting architect reviewed the proposed contemporary style project and had no issues or concerns and provided no recommendation for changes. The proposed project meets the technical requirement of the town's code for floor area, building coverage, parking, and height. The project is being referred to the Planning Commission due to the applicant's request for exceptions to the hillside development standards and guidelines. One is to construct a retaining wall exceeding 50 linear feet without a break, and to build outside the least restrictive development area. And as a reminder, LRDA on a site, as this is subject to a 30% slope and tree canopy. And the Hillside Development Standard and Guideline defines LRDA as the least restricted area on a property where development would have minimal impact on the natural landscape of the environment. The applicant has provided justification for the exception in Exhibit 4. And this concludes staff's presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Burnett.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I met with Suri. I had questions about the 67-foot long wall. And you answered my questions. It starts at 1 feet, then goes 3 feet, and then 1 feet, it's contoured.
It just kind of undulates, and it ranges from 1 feet to 3 feet.
And then it's the color of the stucco of the house.
That's right. It's a dark gray.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for myself. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff at this time? Okay, thank you. We will now open the public portion of the public hearing, and I do have a card for Mr. Koltzat, so thank you. You have 5 minutes.
And we have just a little slide presentation to assist. Thank you for your patience. Hopefully this is something that everybody understands what we're doing here. This property was created from an SB 9, kind of a unique property because it has frontage on 2 sides. It's really kind of ideal because the existing home that the Conroys live in today, they use the garage and this guest quarters on occasion for family members, but it's really kind of North 40 for them. So it actually made a lot of sense for them to split this lot. It made a lot of sense for us to take on this project. In discussing that with staff before we even did the SB9, it was clear that we were going to end up with a property that had very little LRDA. And that was from the beginning. Everybody knew that, and we were assured that this is going to be something that we could all deal with together. We worked together with staff quite a bit. We actually looked at the idea of doing this with objective standards and no discretionary review whatsoever, but we decided against that. And so here we are because staff felt that it was too much to take on the fact that we are in LRDA. 30% of this home is actually out of the LRDA. So as our planner mentioned, we are demolishing the house, but it's more of a technical demolition. We are leaving a good portion of the existing structure there. It's banked into the hillside with this garage, and we're adding onto that garage. We have angled the home from the existing garage construction to respond to the contours as best we could. This was in order to create this home for the Conroys that was modern in style, that had a significant exterior, covered exterior entertainment area. It was very important to them. That's in the LRDA, as opposed to putting it up on the hill in the back and cutting into the hillside and asking for more exceptions. So this home is very low profile. It's not visible. We're not asking for any exceptions. We're actually well underneath the FAR. We have neighbor support. All the neighbors are in favor of this. We have no exceptions on that. The wall exception is kind of a minor thing. It is behind the home. It's not visible. We could, to make it technically acceptable or conforming, is to tilt that wall where the contours change at the 50-foot line. We felt that would cause more grading. And right now, the wall steps down to that 1 foot height and 18-inch height. And that's where the 50-foot break is. And so if you have any more questions on that wall, we actually have, I'm sorry, I missed my 5 and 6 show the wall. We have some extra renderings that show the wall on pages 5 and 6. There is the wall that's behind there, highlighted in the blue, and there's some pictures of that where the retaining wall exists, and it's really not visible. It's kind of a minor wall. We could go back to slide 2. And that's just another rendering of the home. We're actually very proud of the architecture. We think it blends in well with the site. It's very demure, and we have lots of screening around this property. And what we feel is we're by reusing the existing structure as much as we can, saving that, and then building onto that, we think that we have really turned this into an outstanding project. I hope you agree. I'm here to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant at this time? Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We will now we will open for public comment. I don't have any cards, and I'm assuming
there is a hand raised, but I think it may be the landscape architect. Are you working with Mr. Fox? Okay, so yes, no hands are raised other than applicants at this time.
Perfect. So then you will have another 3 minutes to close, and then we'll have time to ask you questions.
Okay. I think just to sum it up again, this home is low profile. It's banked into the hillside. It's well underneath the FAR. We're only removing 2 trees. One of them is really only because of the required cut for the retaining walls and our OSHA cut to provide that. And otherwise, we would try to save one tree. It's just not going to survive during construction. We have neighbors that we've communicated with. We have support of our neighbors, and we're adding another home to the housing stock of Los Gatos.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Sure. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we will now close the public portion of the public hearing on item number 4, and I invite commissioners to ask questions of staff and discuss and make a motion. Commissioner Raspy.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions for staff. I'm going to go just out on a limb and say, unlike every other matter we've had tonight, this is an easy one for me. I like this design. It, as we said, it complies with the FAR, height, setback, parking. They're asking for 2 exceptions. The retaining wall, which I think is, again, not a big deal. It's not prominent, it's low profile, and it works, and I think it's the best solution. And the LRDA, I think the LRDA were in that situation because of the SB9 split. But more importantly, the LRDA is meant to minimize the impact of a home in a hillside, and this design does that. It works well on the hillside, it's unobtrusive, the material choices are great, so I support this project in its current configuration.
Thank you. I would just like to add on to that, and then I'll get to you, Commissioner Stump. I think that with the retaining wall situation, it's clear in the way that the guidelines are written that it's for aesthetic purposes to break it up. And I think that enforcing that right now would only cause additional grading and it's not an aesthetic problem. And so I don't have an issue with that. And yeah, the slope of the property just makes it a weird situation with the LRDA. So I agree with Commissioner Raspy. I would also like to say that I do really feel like the design itself does a really great job of we see, it's rare that we see our consulting architect have no feedback and say don't change anything. And I think that just says a lot about the thoughtfulness of the project, and I really appreciate that, especially in the hillsides. And then additionally, I was very excited to see that all of that you're planning to plant more trees than required, and they are all natives. And I think that's something it would be really beautiful. And there are some really gorgeous oak trees already on this property. And I think that the additional landscaping that you have presented tonight is really going to complement the entire project. So, Commissioner Stump.
Certainly agree with the comments related to the LRDA as well as the retaining wall. Question that I have of staff, related to the LRDA, the slope of the property, are there any known issues? This may be an engineering question related to the request related to slope or anything else related to going outside of the LRDA.
So thank you for Surrey. I'll jump in a little bit. So, there are various levels of geotech soils done at the planning and then ultimately during construction phase. So all of those issues will be addressed and geotechnically engineered so that it limits the potential for that in the future. We aren't aware of any known, slides on the site or anything like that. And that type of question, we could have probably asked the applicant because they would have been more aware of that, but we're not aware of any, active current situations like that.
Thank you.
Any other, Commissioner Burnett?
Yes, I agree with the fellow commissioners. I think it's a beautiful design, and I think the way the home just went right into the hillside, and even though the LRDA was part of that, I think the way you designed it and how it just fits right in is a beautiful job. My main question was the 67-foot long retaining wall, but I think I got my questions answered on that. But I think it's a beautiful design, and it's going to be a complement to that area. It's a wonderful area around there. Thank you.
Does anyone want to try for a motion?
I'll take
Commissioner
that.
Raspy?
Thank you, Chair. I move to approve the demolition of an existing single-family residence and construction of a new single-family residence, the removal of large protected trees, and site work requiring a grading permit on property located at HR 2.5, located at 119 Hardwood Court, APN 527-56027, architecture and site application S24040. I can make the findings that the project is categorically exempt from CEQA as required by section 29.10.09030 sub E of the Town Code for the demolition of existing structures. The project meets objective standards of Chapter 29 of Town Code. The project is in compliance with hillside development standards and guidelines for single-family residents, with the exception to build outside the LRDA and to construct a retaining wall exceeding 50 linear feet in continuous direction. And finally, that the project complies with the hillside specific plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Burnett. Seconds. And any discussion? Was that motion, did we need to include the conditions of approval? I'm sorry, I wasn't fully listening. Did that include the conditions of approval?
It does now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And anything else? Okay.
Yeah, it sounded
so
as
sorry.
if Commissioner Raspy was agreeing with the recommendation as stated in the staff report.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise their hand. The motion passes unanimously. Are there appeal rights?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So there are appeal rights. Anyone who's not satisfied with the decision of the Planning Commission can appeal that decision. The appeal forms are available in the clerk's office and online. There's a fee for filing the appeal, and the appeal must be filed within 10 days.
Thank you. And thank you. Apologies again for it being so late. We really appreciate all of it. Thank you. So that is our last item on our big part of our agenda. So now I believe, I don't know if we have a report from Director of Community Development, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, last week the council approved Los Gatos Lodge, which was afforded a recommendation from the Planning Commission. They also decided to remand the Reservoir Road project back to the Planning Commission, so that will go back for a resolution to enact that next week. And then also just wanted to let folks know that the CAL FIRE has released local responsibility area fire severity maps. So those are being updated. So those are online. You can see it on the front page of the town's website as well as other places. And we're looking for feedback for those as we go through the process of ultimately the council adopting a new LRA map for the town specifically.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Commissioner Stump.
Joel, what does feedback look like on the LRA since the state basically lays out the zones? And what's really changed, of course, Los Gatos is no longer as red as it used to be. It's been greatly reduced, the very high fire hazard severity zone. We now have a high fire hazard severity zone identified as well as a moderate fire zone identified. So
right now the feedback is really public comment. So if you have public comments, related to what's the currently proposed, and many people are going to have experience, such as yourself, with what the current map shows. And so there are opportunities for the council to have those policy discussions and potentially increase the zones from what's currently proposed in the revisions, either higher or back to very high, which was what predominantly was in the hillside. But that's ultimately going to be a policy decision that I think public comment would help inform council's ultimate decision on that.
Thank you.
And I'm assuming public comment, there's a link to that online with this.
That's correct. There's links to emails.
Perfect. Okay. In addition to their service on the Planning Commission, members of the commission serve on several town committees. Do we have any subcommittee reports? I know that HPC met last week, so Commissioner Burnett.
Actually, we met February 26th, and we had 3 items. One was a beautiful home on Wildway that they came back to us because they were concerned about, they wanted to replace the windows, and the windows in this home are just beautiful. They're metal. But we had a very well historian who deals basically in homes like this with window concerns and replacement windows, and he brought in samples, so it was a real learning experience, and this home will be, it will look like it still looks, and even though the windows will be changed. And then we had a couple of others that were another total window change. Everyone wants to change out their windows these days. And another one was for garage redo on the exterior.
Okay, thank you. Any other, CDAC met today? Thank you, Commissioner Raspy.
Chair, CDAC met today. We had a single matter. It was 235 Oak Meadow. Proposal to demo existing structure and construction of proposed 6-story multi-family residence, which you can imagine garnered many comments, and we'll see what the applicant has taken those comments to heart and come back with a more fully developed design.
Any other general plan committee hasn't met, so I don't think so. Okay. Moving on to commission matters. Are there any matters that any commissioner wishes to share or propose for future discussion? Okay. And then just thank you to staff and everyone here. It was a late night, so appreciate all of you. Yes.
One thing we probably should say is that 4 of us attended the Planning Commissioners Academy.
Oh yeah,
in Santa
I guess
Rosa.
that is it. Yes, we
First
did.
of all, thanks to the town for sponsoring, supporting that. Very, very worthwhile. Probably especially for a newer commissioner, but there was something for everybody. Particularly of interest was CEQA for Dummies. Actually, they didn't title it that way, but they started with kind of an introduction to CEQA, and then the following day, because we did so well in the first session, we continued on to CEQA Advanced. So I think we all got a blue ribbon, maybe a participation ribbon, but it was very helpful. We got to see people there that we knew. Barbara was a panelist there. So it was very good to hear about things that are very relevant. I did stay on for Thursday, and they did a complete legislative update, which was very interesting with what's happening in 2025, what's on the docket. So it was very worthwhile. It was also very worthwhile meeting other commissioners from the state of California. And I got to tell you, good people. Everyone that we met and had a chance to interact with. And it's interesting because the challenges are the same, but they're different in other locations. So I would highly recommend, whether, regardless of the experience of the commissioner, to really, attend that regularly. I think next year it's going to be at Anaheim. So I think everyone will want to go.
Thank you. I agree. It was an experience for sure. No, it was very helpful. There being no further business of the commission, this meeting is adjourned.